Good evening, members. We're pleased to remain standing while my friend David addresses you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for inviting me to present this Humanist blessing today. Shall I sit down? No. Okay, I'll start again. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for inviting me to present this Humanist blessing today. Now, humanism is not a religion. Obviously, I'm playing the chaplain at the moment. It's not a religion or even a faith in the conventional sense. So the term blessing, which usually has religious connotations, may seem a little incongruous coming from a humanist. But humanism is still a belief, and a belief that's rooted in ideas about the worth of human beings and the importance of personal freedom, justice, democracy, compassion, empathy, generosity, love, and also the acceptance and welcoming of those who share those basic ideas, but who nevertheless may have taken a different route towards those values. And all of this mellowed and enriched by a rational approach to life's great issues, because the only way to solve them is through our own human efforts. You'll soon be debating and perhaps making decisions today that will require you to enlist all those attitudes and qualities that I've mentioned. And that's a great responsibility that, in the end, at its best, should transcend political differences and personal agendas and any outside pressure that comes from vested interests. I note from your agenda that, among other things, you'll be reviewing issues connected with growing pressures on housing and neighbourhood planning, which must surely be part of the solution. And also you'll be considering matters relating to local resilience and emergency procedures. Such vital matters that you will soon be debating and perhaps even arguing about over your various solutions to the issues at hand. And that is healthy, of course, as it should be. There is often more than one solution to any problem. But once the decision has been made, it will be the time for collaboration and working together in the interests of all the constituents concerned. That is, those who will be affected, those who place their confidence in you as someone who speaks for them, and who have entrusted you to take decisions on their behalf and in their interests. I feel sure you don't need to be reminded that it is your constituents who have placed their confidence in you to have their interests at heart that needs to be at the forefront of your minds. So it is with that thought that this humble humanist wishes you well. I know that in some cases you may have a great deal of information to absorb, and that alone can be a challenge. But I'm confident that if you face the tasks ahead with the values that I listed at the beginning in mind, you won't go far wrong. And this humanist wishes you good luck in your endeavours. Thank you for listening to me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please be seated, everybody. There's an assumption you're all signed in with your voting card. The first item of business is apologies for absence. Councillor Harvey, have you got any apologies for absence?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Apologies from Councillors Basham and Ashfield.
Okay. Councillor Minus-Bound, have you got any apologies?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Apologies from Councillor Golding, Councillor Carr, Councillor Perry, Councillor Putty and Councillor McIntyre. Thank you
very much. Councillor Gavin James, have you got any apologies?
I have nothing to apologise for, Mr. Mayor.
That's good. Okay. Councillor Ibrahim.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Apologies from Councillor McCormick and Councillor Harper.
Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I just ask people when they speak to speak up tonight? Some of us are deaf, or it could be just me, but with this buzz, I find it quite difficult.
Noted. Thank you very much. Item 2 on the agenda, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest for tonight? Councillor Vaux.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to declare that I am a member of the Basingstoke Indoor Tennis Centre It is in one of the financial reports tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There's assumption that you've read the minutes of the meetings on the 8th and the 15th. Are you happy that I sign those as a true record? Seconded by... That's you, Jack, probably. Item 4, announcements. Just one shameless plug for my first fundraiser of the year is a variety show at the Anvil on October the 4th. Get your tickets before they all go out. Thank you.
Sorry to be a pain. I don't have a problem with hearing, but I'm having a difficulty hearing you because of these machines. Is there any way that somebody could turn up the volume from the panel, please?
Well,
so the volume doesn't go any higher, so it's whether they would be happy to have the airflow units turned off.
The answer, Councillor Cubitt, the answer is the volume doesn't go any higher, but we can turn off the airflow units. So we'll have to talk a bit louder, everybody, if you don't mind. We'll talk as loud as we can. Thank you. Members?
Sorry. So I don't mind if you turn them off. I don't know whether you want to vote. There's some people here also saying, other fellow members that are saying they'd prefer them off because they can't hear you either.
No, is it the wish of the members that we turn off the airflow machines? Let's turn them off. Who knows how to turn them off? Item 5 on the agenda. Item 5 on the agenda is questions from members of the public. Mr. Simpson, could you come up to the, turn on the microphone?
Okay. Mr. Mayor, councillors, my question is, in governance arrangements, please can the proposed overview committee for BASH regeneration terms of reference include the like-for-like principle for those residents that are to be displaced by the regeneration? This is where the profit from any land acquired or tenancy terminated is first applied to ensure that these residents receive like-for-like alternative accommodation in the town with no material detriment such as displacement outside of either Southam or Buckskin, or shared ownership versus outright ownership, for example. If the regeneration is to be undertaken with a joint venture partner, then any profit must first be applied to guarantee like for residents before any other distribution can be made to either SNG or its development partners. Profit should be baseline prior to the project's commencement and restated in line with any subsequent updates to the plan. And as one aside, you all got an email from me with a presentation, so on the presentation, man. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Harvey, can you respond?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Marcus, for your question. This is definitely an important issue that SNG need to hear residents' views on. The right place to debate the like-for-like point you raise is then really important. Basingstoke and Dean's Overview Committees can scrutinise the work of this council. They may ask partners to participate, but we can't compel them and we cannot command them. We need to make that point very clear. And as MHCLG made clear in their reply to your email, housing associations are independent bodies and run their own governance and scrutiny processes. So in answer, the Overview Committee as proposed would only be able to ask SNG that question and invite them to participate. We need a different process to get residents more involved. What we really need is an inclusive process integral to SNG's decision making. It's an SNG project. It's for them to agree what processes they will create working with residents. Now I think that a resident steering group directly involving residents and councillors working with SNG would be a good idea. The way to build trust is for residents to be involved in co-designing the process that moves forward. That involves answering your question and addressing the sensible points that you raise.
Thank you. Mr Simpson, do you have a supplementary question?
Just a quick one. So just to make sure I've understood correctly then, Councillor Harvey, so SNG wouldn't be compelled to participate in this scrutiny committee, and what about me as a resident? Can I attend and say something?
Thank you, Marcus. The council has a scrutiny committee to oversee its business. Councillors of those committees decide what they scrutinise. They set the agenda of those committees, and those committees offer them the opportunity to dive deep into certain subjects of their choice. So we need to make it clear that our processes are set down in our constitution. And in that constitution, members of the public get 2 minutes to make a representation at those committees. It's not an interaction or an engagement. It's about councillors discussing and debating council decisions and policies. In this situation, I don't think residents will get what you want from setting up an overview committee, but it is councillors' prerogative, supported by officers, to do so. And it's not for me as leader to comment on what scrutiny should or should not look at. That's their choice. But given SNG is a sovereign body, no pun intended, I must stress that this is not a council-led project. I firmly believe, and I'm of the view, that a resident steering group led by SNG, directly involving residents and councillors, would be an inclusive and directly address the accountability point. It needs to be a body that derives its authority from SNG. Reference has been made in emails to Many Down Overview Committee. It was a good decision to scrutinise the Borough Council's involvement in that project, because it was the Borough Council's own project, and we were the landowner and developer. And that's a fundamentally different point in this project, where the project is led by SNG. I hope that answers your question, Marcus. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey. Ms Lindsay, your question, please.
This is my question. How will the council...
Do you want to turn the microphone on? Have we got
Sorry?
It is on, yeah.
It is on. How will the council independently validate the guarantee that SNG will take full account of the local community's views with regard to the regeneration project in South Ham and Buckskin, as opposed to SNG simply going through the motions of engagement with which the local community just simply doesn't trust?
Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you, Mr Lindsay, for your question. You raise a really important point. Accountability and trust are important to the process SNG are embarking on, and I can assure you it's my belief that they're not simply going through the motions. They have heard the community very loud and very clear, and they want to work with the community, with you, to co-design what comes forward, to work up ideas. So a process that sees residents at the heart of their engagement structure would be a massive step forward. I know SNG are listening on that very point, and will be advocating for residents to be at the heart of that process. We'll be championing the residents' role in that process, as we should. You will be the judge of that process, not the council. You will either work with SNG constructively shaping what comes, and therein they'll earn your trust. You'll only trust them if their actions, and step by step you'll see them meet your expectations in engagement and listening. But crucially, you'll have that opportunity to co-design, and there is a job of work for them to do to rebuild the trust. The door's wide open for Bash and for other residents to work with SNG, and we strongly encourage that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey. Ms Lindsay, do you have a supplementary question?
I do, yes. Sorry, I do, yes. Councillor Harvey, will you commit to attending the Bash meeting on the 22nd of July at the Howard Bowls Club? We want you to hear the concerns of the residents. Simon Menas-bound Conservative leader has confirmed he's attending, and also Sean Dillow is also attending.
Yes, I've had conversations with you throughout. I've had conversations with Marcus throughout. We've met with SNG together. I've got no issue attending and discussing, and we'll put that in the diary.
Shame you weren't invited before.
Thank you. Item 6 on the agenda is petitions. There are none. So we move to item 7, which is resignations and appointments. Group leaders, are there any changes to committee seats? Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. On development control, Councillor Howard Sorrell off and Councillor Watts on and Councillor Oborne to be a sub. And then on audit and accounts, Councillor Watts off, Councillor Howard Sorrell on. Thank you.
No others, leaders? No? Okay. Now, we've got a vacancy for this patrol adjudication joint committee. It's a statutory requirement that we have one member. Have we got any nominations? Councillor Gavin James.
Yes, on the basis he was late for our group meeting on Monday, Councillor Konieczko was volunteered to take on the role.
And therefore, do we have a seconder? Or do you need a seconder? Yeah.
Is it agreed?
Is it agreed, everybody? Agreed. Right, okay. Are there any nominations to fill vacancies on outside bodies listed? Listed on the back? Don't look like it. Right, at this stage of the agenda, I am going to change the running order. So what I want to do now is to go straight to motions. So we're going to start with item 15. And Councillor Minus-Bound, if you could move your motion.
Thank you, Mr.
Councillor Lord James. Councillor Lord James. Okay, here we go. Councillor Minus-Bound.
They're all very keen, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
I bring this motion because our borough is facing a housing challenge that is growing in both complexity and urgency. Basingstoke-Deane is a borough that has always stepped up, whether it's contributing to economic growth in the region or meeting local housing needs. But we are now being asked to do more, without the tools, the funding or planning clarity to do it well. Our social housing demand is growing, the private rental market is stretched. We know all these things. And now with the government's plan to end asylum hotels by 2029 without a clear alternative, there is a real risk that our already limited housing stock will come under even more pressure. So let me be clear, Mr. Mayor, and I feel the need to be clear before anybody who might be classed as difficult or abusive has a go at me at bringing this motion. It's not about pointing fingers or turning our backs on those in need. It is about common sense and fairness and ensuring that we do the best for our local residents, those who live and work here, raise their families here and contribute to our communities, making sure they are not pushed further down the list. We are asking for reasonable assurances from central government that local housing supply won't be diverted, that resettlement schemes are properly funded, and that we aren't left to absorb national pressures without a plan. I commend this motion to the Council. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Ganesh, you're seconding this motion. Do you want to speak now or reserve your right?
If I may speak, Mr. Mayor?
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay. Thank you and good evening, Mr. Mayor. I'm here to formally second this motion and express my full support for this clear call for fairness on planning and practical support in the face of growing housing pressure in our borough. So just like Councillor Minus-Bound mentioned, I just would like to make it very clear. It's not about turning our backs on those in need. Basingstoke-Deane has demonstrated its compassion and commitment to humanitarian efforts in the past. We have welcomed Afghan families, supported Ukrainian refugees, and opened our arms to those fleeing conflict and persecution around the world. So that is something we should be proud of, and I'm proud to represent a borough that stands for those values. So the key issue before us tonight is not just the rising demand, but the lack of coordination and communication and resourcing from central government to help us manage that demand effectively. So what concerns me most is the disconnect between national government's ambitions and the local delivery, whether it's asylum dispersal or resettlement schemes or new policies to phase out asylum hotels. So decisions are made in Whitehall, but the impact is being felt on our streets. So in our housing registers and across our public services. As you all may be aware, that we have an ever-growing housing register of over 4,000 residents. So we are being asked to absorb more and more responsibilities without being given the infrastructure or investment to grow with it. While Councillor Minus-Brown rightly highlighted the need for fairness across the housing, I want to focus on another essential aspect, the planning and the capacity. So we cannot run housing policy just on press releases. We need reliable data, timely updates, and honest dialogue with government about what is expected of us. Because without that, we are planning in the dark, not knowing what is down the line for us to expect. So there is a very real risk that without clear funding and alternative accommodation strategies, the councils will be forced to stretch their limited housing even further, causing tension, frustration and disruption for existing communities in our Basingstoke and Dean Borough. So this motion lays out a sensible path forward, asking for assurances, calling for investment and seeking clarity on national plans that directly affect our borough. These are not radical demands. These are the foundations of responsible local governance in our borough. So, Mr. Mayor, I second this motion because it reflects a mature, balanced position on that acknowledge our humanitarian obligations while recognising the duty that we owe to our residents, our own residents in Basingstoke and Dean. So I urge members across the chamber to support this motion and to make it clear that Basingstoke and Dean expect to be partner and not just a passenger in shaping the future of housing in our communities within our borough. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. And now we'll open the debate. Councillor Orr James.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a national issue which should be handled responsibly and sensitively. Any speculation based on false information that conflates asylum concerns with local emotive issues, such as a demand for affordable housing, can be inflammatory. It can also destabilise the great work that is being done with our partners on social housing, and importantly the work that has been done working with the Home Office with refugees, which began under your administration. The use of the term migration schemes is inappropriate. The government programmes that have been involved with our refugees. These have been exclusively Afghan families and Ukrainians. Schemes targeted at refugees arriving into the country through legal routes. But the mover of the motion already knows this. It is really important to state clearly that asylum seekers have no recourse to public funds, and all aspects of their support are administered and funded by the Home Office. They are not housed in social housing, and they cannot join the register or access any support services. All refugee schemes we have been fully funded by previous governments or the current one. Again, it is absolutely critical to state that the funding is outside of and is additional to other significant funding support the council receives for housing and homelessness prevention and support initiatives. The funding for refugees from the government has delivered properties which have been additional to social housing delivery programme. They are totally separate from it. Importantly, these separate properties will eventually come into the social housing stock when they become available, because the stock has been acquired in perpetuity, and this will benefit local people on the register. It is absolutely critical to say that the provision for refugees has not been at the expense of services and resources for local people. It would be thoroughly misleading to suggest that it is the case. The total of our 18 properties for refugees, 6 Afghans and 12 Ukrainians have been provided through separate government funding, compared to over 500 new affordable homes and over 1,500 properties advertised on the choice-based lettings to meet local need on the register in the same time period. The government's capital funding this year will deliver 1 refugee unit and 3 units of accommodation, which will be used for local homeless households, to avoid local families with children being placed in bed and breakfast accommodation. There are social housing pressures in Basingstoke and Deane, but to be clear, these are driven by local demand, not regional. These housing pressures are being proactively addressed through a robust housing and homeless strategy. Let me remind you that when we inherited the pipeline, it was just 14 new socially rented homes in 2022-23. As a result of this administration's actions, the housing register is falling. In 2021, there were 4,900 on the register, and in March this year there was 4,400. Last year we exceeded our affordable housing target by 300, with almost all of those being socially rented, or half of those being. We have also maintained our commitment to ensuring that there is no change to our housing allocation policy, which allows strict local connection priorities, with few exceptions for armed services, care leavers and victims of domestic abuse. Our trailblazing of rough sleeping has been numbers over the last has seen a fall from 26 to 2 over the decade's work. This work is set to accelerate. I'm really pleased to be able to announce tonight that we have exchanged contracts, I'm just about to, Mr Mayor, on May Place, and we will secure the future of our borough's homeless hostel. We are really proud of what we are achieving for our residents and the national recognition we get for this. Coming back to the motion...
Really need to stop now.
Okay.
Councillor Cubitt.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Good evening, Mr Mayor and fellow councillors. I don't often speak about national politics in this chamber, but this motion, which directly relates to this Labour government's actions via the Home Office and the MHCLG and local government, has profound implications for local authorities across the country, including ours. I want to address 2 critical issues: a troubling lack of transparency in national governance and the mounting pressures of population growth on our local resources. Firstly, I am deeply concerned by the recent revelations of a super injunction that concealed a significant Ministry of Defence data breach during the Conservative government's reign. This lack of openness is unacceptable, and it undermines public trust and leaves local authorities grappling with the consequences of decisions made behind closed doors. Transparency is the foundation of accountability, and we must demand better from this Labour government than we did of the Conservative government. Second, let's address the issue of population growth driven by immigration, a challenge that directly affects our borough. For years, successive governments have promised to manage migration effectively, yet the data tells a very different story. The United Nations projects that without a change in policy, the UK's population will rise from 69.6 million today to 74.3 million by 2100, a 6.8% increase, faster than any major EU country. Net migration is expected to total 14.3 million by the century's end, which is nearly double France's projected increased figure of 7.8 million. Without this migration, the UK's population would decline, I understand, to below 50 million by 2100 due to falling birth rates. This growth places immense pressures on our local resources, and our borough's population has surged from 54,000 in 1974, when our hospital was built, to 187,000 today, with projections nearing 250,000. We face shortages of water, overwhelmed sewage systems, and a housing crisis exacerbated by centrally imposed targets that far exceed our natural population needs. These are not abstract numbers. They strain our schools, our hospitals, and our infrastructure, fueling public frustration. The data also highlights a rise in the demand for public services, and we recently got advised that the number of foreign nationals on universal credit has increased from 906,000 in June 2022 to 1.26 million last month, with only 118,000 of them being refugees and 59.1% unemployed in May this year. This underscores the need for better integration and support systems both locally and nationally. Locally, I commend our housing team, led by Kate Randall and the Cabinet member, Councillor Laura James, for their outstanding work on social housing and homelessness. I am assured that we are adhering strictly to our social housing list, prioritising those with local connections. Our borough participates, I am advised, in only 3 national resettlement programmes: the now closed Afghan resettlement, the LAF programme, and the Ukraine resettlement support and dispersal programme. We are not housing social housing tenants from other authorities, nor are we involved in third-party contracts from the Home Office, though I note that the Home Office has recently advised officers it has acquired 5 unallocated apartments in our borough via third-party contractors.
Just one more minute.
Our economic success has driven much of this growth, and that is something to celebrate, but it does come at an infrastructure cost. We must acknowledge these pressures whilst continuing to prioritise our residents' needs. The Labour government must step up. Both Conservative and Labour governments have to date failed to deliver on promises to control migration and address its impacts. This has left local authorities like ours to manage the fallout. Broken manifesto pledges erode public trust, and democracy suffers when the will of the people is ignored. I believe this council is doing an exceptional job under challenging circumstances, but we need the Labour government to match our local efforts. I call on this government to honour its commitments to stop the boats, invest in our infrastructure, especially in our water infrastructure and our hospital, and work with us to build a sustainable future. Together, we can restore trust and ensure our borough remains a place where our residents thrive. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Whilst I'm not opposed to this motion in principle, I do express that we approach this with a deep sense of caution and responsibility. Because while the pressures on housing and local services are real and growing, so too is our duty to respond in a way that is fair and lawful. As a Labour representative, I am proud of my commitment to strong public services, support for those in need, and an unwavering belief in equality and justice. And so I feel it's important to voice concern about aspects of this motion that may risk putting us at odds with the law and basic human dignity. The proposal to prioritise local residents for social housing, however well-intentioned, may inadvertently cross into legal uncertain territory. We have clear duties under the Housing Act, the Equality Act and other legislation to allocate housing without discrimination and with regard to need. Refugees, asylum seekers and resettled individuals are part of our community too, and many have fled unimaginable hardship, which, having served in Afghanistan, I have seen firsthand. We must ensure that any policy we support does not stigmatise or exclude them, even unintentionally. I'm also concerned about the language used around so-called illegal economic migration. That phrase is not only legally undefined, it also risks conflating very different groups, including those who are lawfully claiming asylum. As someone who is a progressive, I am mindful of how language shapes public perception, especially in debates as sensitive as this. Let me be clear. It's entirely right that we ask government to step up with proper funding, better planning and meaningful coordination on housing and migration. We do need solutions, but we also need to ensure that our response is rooted in compassion, fact and legal clarity. That's why I'm asking this council that should this motion pass this evening, to pause, seek legal advice on some of the requests in this motion before moving forward. Let's ensure that any action we take is not only practical, but also principled. Let's protect our residents but not by undermining the rights or dignity of others who are equally in need of support. Let's show that it is possible to be both realistic and radically fair. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Harvey?
That lined up for you, didn't it? I think it's without doubt that the issue of migration remains one of the most high-profile and politically charged issues in this country, generating an awful lot of media attention and a significant public debate. Migration relates to a number of complex and sensitive issues, as we have all said. The motion specifically talks about infrastructure and services and a combination of factors creating demand and pressure on housing. I think we need to be factual. The infrastructure deficit in this borough, a shortage of GPs, of teachers, of police, a lack of youth services, mental health services, a lack of social housing, all relate to the major ongoing lack of investment by the government over many years. The reality people face is not that 18 refugee families, 12 Ukrainian, 6 Afghan, have somehow become the tipping point. We are already in that place because of 20 years of underfunding and cuts. There's been a lot of talk recently about the children living in poverty. The choice of the 2015 of the Conservative government to dismantle the Child Poverty Act and their austerity closed our 11 children's centres across Basingstoke. So let's talk about facts. The lack of investment in the NHS has produced a shortage of doctors, nurses, NHS dentists and services. The choice to focus on affordable housing at 80% of market rent, not proper social rented housing, meant many people were priced out of affording a local home. There was a huge lack of housing grant funding over many years to actually build social housing in the first place. The police lost over 20,000 officers under the previous government. So when we talk about pressure on services and where that pressure comes from, we need to be factual and honest about the failings of the government over many years. That is a political choice they made that we are living with. In Basingstoke, in the last local plan in 2016, it identified a £199 million infrastructure deficit. Now, you talk about pressure on housing. Much of that pressure on the rental sector in Basingstoke comes from us not building enough socially rented houses. That underpins the service deficit identified back in 2016, and that is something we are all still living with today. A really good example was the promise in 2019 of a new hospital, a false promise when there was no money to ever allocate it in the first place. That's the kind of vital public service our residents need, not broken promises. So we've got to be really careful conflating things that might seem reasonable until you look at them a little closer. We could write to the Secretary of State, but we need to be factually accurate about where our housing pressures are actually coming from, and to be absolutely clear to everybody in the room. There are not refugees and asylum seekers are not being housed in social housing. They cannot join the register or access any support services. All of the refugee schemes we have been fully funded by the previous government or the current one directly from the Home Office. That's a really important point. That burden does not rest on our local residents. So the picture you paint isn't really the reality, and so your urgency to do this isn't there for the reasons you say. We already have a robust allocations policy which affirms our commitment to prioritising Basingstoke and Dean residents. It's again critical to be factual. Asylum seekers and refugees cannot access the register, as I say. The current government and the last have both fully funded any provision in capital and revenue for the 18 households, and there's no indication that policy is going to change. Our local budgets are not used in any way to support these households. And just to be clear, we don't have any irregular or unplanned arrivals in Basingstoke and Dean. The housing team
Can we sum up, Councillor Harvey, because I've got two more speakers.
I will. The housing team work with partners, organisations like South East Migration Partnership and the Home Office, and their focus has always been on what is best for Basingstoke and Deane. As a motion, as it's written, I can't support it because it's factually misleading. The reasons residents in Basingstoke and Deane face housing pressure stems solely from the cuts and lack of investment by the government in the services they rely on over many years, and you only have to look to the County Council cutting vital services to see the pressure that it is placing on our residents in Basingstoke and Deane.
Councillor Hart.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor James and Councillor Harvey have been very, very clear on asylum seekers not being entitled to social housing. We know this, and they've addressed how this motion conflates and confuses a number of different things. So I want to specifically address the mention of the demand and pressures in the rental sector and some of the things that somehow never come up when we discuss this issue. And the things that I want to know why we never ever talk about when we discuss this issue, that the pressures are real. There are more people here now. But the single largest driver of population growth is not resettlement programmes or asylum seekers or illegal anybody. It's that people aren't dying. Life expectancy has gone up and people live in their houses for longer. We never ever talk about that. This is from the ONS data. Between 1981 and 2021, Basingstoke and Deane's birth rate averaged around 13 births per 1,000 people per year, while our mortality rate averaged around 8 deaths per 1,000 people per year. In simple terms, through those 40 years, if we started the year with 1,000 people, we ended it with 1,005. Over those 40 years, that's 1,220 people. It's an increase of 22%. Hopefully that maths wasn't too difficult. I'm fairly sure it wasn't abusive. But I promise you, housing need is not caused by a handful of Afghan or Ukrainian families in this borough. Some people do come here from elsewhere. I myself came over here from Farnborough in 2012. It was more affordable, and I liked it better. Movement data is trickier than births and deaths, but in-country migration is another big factor in growth. London's affordability perimeter is widening every year. And in the northeast of England, in that same 1981 to 2021 period that I just mentioned, which saw our population grow organically, purely the birds and the bees,
Can you just finish, because we've had the 20 minutes of the debate, and apologies to anybody who hasn't spoken.
The average population there was zero growth. They're having babies, they're coming here. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Jones.
Can I ask you to actually extend this debate, because I think it's quite important.
Yeah, I will. Do you want to, is that, are members happy to extend the debate?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, do you want to finish off your bit, Councillor Hart?
I forgot to turn my microphone off, so yes, thank you. What were we talking about? Oh yeah, babies in the northeast of England. They are having them, but during those 40 years there was a 0% growth rate, because many leave and come to places like Basingstoke, where the vast majority of investment and business has long been disproportionately concentrated here. This motion, in summary, does not concern itself with the vast majority of the real reasons for housing pressures, nor the real causes of the pressures on massively and consistently underfunded public services and infrastructure, as Councillor Harvey laid out. Instead, it wants us to seek assurances and processes and funding that we already have. The housing crisis is very real, and solving it is vital. So it's a shame to read a proposal which ignores the majority of the real causes and focuses on the tiny minority of people that are too often used to try and scare us with and divide us over. Thank you.
Councillor Gavin James, I rescind my apology for not being able to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Actually, now most people have said it, so thank you for saving me all the effort and energy. I certainly won't be supporting this motion. The proposals seem to be a mixture of please ask government to stop doing what they're not doing and ask government to do what they're doing already. It seems to be an anti-immigration speech try to fit into motion. And in fairness to Councillor Minnis-Bound, I did go and look at a few other councils, and I appreciate this is a cut and paste from the Conservative councillor's website. Another councillor has done exactly the same motion, so he didn't write it himself. The real reason for proposing it, though, is it's based on misinformation. The immigration debate is sensitive. The immigration debate is out of control, more so than immigration. And until we have a factual debate, we'll never grow and develop and become a better country. To make it absolutely clear, and I know everyone in the room knows it, but for our listeners, if you're an asylum seeker, you have no recourse to public funds. You're an asylum seeker. You're supervised by the Home Office. If you are granted refugee status, you can be local anywhere, and it's a very small number of people. If you don't, you become deported. If you're an illegal immigrant, then you do not have any access to public resources either. In fact, it's a criminal offence for even a private landlord to house an illegal immigrant. So it's criminal activity. It's not government policy causing the problem. It's government ability to enforce the law. Interestingly, with asylum seekers, I haven't spoken to Yvette Cooper personally, but I get the impression she's actually dealing with the backlog she inherited. So if you think about it, if you have 40,000 people arrive in small boats every year and you do nothing about it for 2 years, you have 80,000 in the country. That's a lot of hotels. If you process them quickly and they're in a country for 3 months, then you only have 10,000 asylum seekers in the country. And I think Yvette Cooper, in fairness to her, is trying to do the job properly. So I'm not going to support this motion. I think we should absolutely reject it and throw it out because it's not based on factual information. There is a very big difference between asylum seekers, refugees and illegal immigrants, and a very different processing in place. And if we're going to have a debate about immigration, let's have one based on fact and not on wild populism. I am concerned, Mr. Mayor, that this is if you read the recipe for fascism, what it starts is with create an enemy, and then create fear of that enemy. And then once you've got the public very scared of this fantasy enemy, they will happily sacrifice their freedoms, their liberties, etc. They'll get rid of the Human Rights Act in order for government to tackle the perceived threat that they fear. Mussolini had the Ethiopians, Hitler had the Jews, and I'm worried this country is going to end up with the migrants as their excuse to go down the road of fascism. Britain's never rolled that way. We never must roll that way. We've been a compassionate country, a caring country that respects international law and human rights. And long may that continue. It's the only reason that Britain becomes Great Britain is because of those facts. So let's get rid of this absolute nonsense and tosh. They should be embarrassed to present to this chamber.
Councillor Tony Jones.
Thank you, Mayor. I wasn't going to speak on this, to be perfectly honest, but first of all, I say I've got a lot of praise for our housing people. They really try and do the best job. But I've sat in this chamber for a hell of a long time, and I've heard these debates going on. We can't we can blame government, rightly so, whatever government it is. We've got a new government at the moment. It's been in 1 year. But what we have in this town is this borough, beg your pardon, quite a lot of money. We invest it, but we don't invest it in housing as such. We could have built council houses, but everything's at a distance in this council lately. Oh, it's not us, it's SNG, it's not this, it's that, because we've given too much away. We've got to start taking responsibility for our people. The worry is out there, a lot of their children can't get houses. Some of the jobs they're getting are very low paid, so they'll never get houses. And it's about time we actually had a proper debate about this, rather than this political debate which is happening now about Afghanistan and everything else. Anybody, it's got nothing to do with it. We are here to look after the people of Basingstoke. And if we can look after refugees as well, all well and good. I haven't got a problem. I shan't be voting on this motion at all. I don't think I'll be voting against. Thank you.
I don't see any more speakers, so Councillor Minor's bound to sum up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We seem to have heard a lot about the past, which was always interesting from Councillor Harvey, well, for a short period of time anyway. We've heard a lot about the current situation from the portfolio holder and lots of my colleagues, and you know what, I will absolutely join them in thanking and showing our appreciation for our housing staff. But I think we need to be clear and understand this isn't about, my motion isn't about the past, it isn't about the current position, it's about what's coming towards us in the future. I've heard people say that actually affordable and the private renter sector, that somehow they don't interact. That is nonsense. If people can't find private rented accommodation, that will of course put more pressure on the housing that we have, because if they stay on our housing list for too long, of course they find a way of getting some housing. So I just want to be clear again, Mr. Mayor, that my motion is about the future. It's about building a plan. Agreeing with Councillor Jones there that says, actually, how can there be anything wrong? It must be common sense. Our residents watching us on the webcast must want to know, what's the plan? They hear lots of things on national television and national radio about a housing crisis, about other people being added to the list. This isn't about immigration, my motion. It isn't about refugees. I have supported refugees when they have come to Basingstoke and then been displaced to other parts of this country. I have been to those roads where they have been forced to live in multiple occupancy, private rented accommodation. And believe me, it puts pressure on those cities and those towns and the rest of the housing market. All I am simply asking for is a conversation about coordination, housing, whether it's our housing service, our housing market, and the pressures that are coming down the track to us. Because I believe it can be best described, whatever the pressures are, wherever they come from, as a tsunami. That is why I'm asking for your support. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. We're ready to move to the vote. You want a recorded vote? Yes. Okay. You get a motion is lost. Shall we move on to the next motion, number 16? I believe that's Councillor Minus-Bound again.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I bring this motion forward because I believe that we will all agree. I believe that this whole chamber supports neighbourhood planning. It's one of the clearest examples of localism in action. It's one of the clearest examples historically of having unanimous votes when the 15 plans have come to this chamber, of giving people the power to shape the places where they live rather than having decisions made for them, often from a distance. Neighbourhood plans are not just documents, they are the product of months and sometimes years of local effort. Volunteers, parish councils, community groups, all working together to express a shared vision for how their area should develop. Housing, employment, community facilities, everything. And I believe this council has always supported that, with the warmest of words from all of us when they have come to be made. With the changes in the Planning and Infrastructure Bill already seen as an attack on local voices being heard, the recent decision by central government to withdraw funding for neighbourhood planning is very concerning. It's not just a budget cut, it's a blow to grassroots democracy. It's where many of our communities are engaged the most. For many parish and town councils, this funding made the difference between being able to proceed, have a plan, or having to abandon it altogether. Now I fear they will just give up. The National Association of Local Councils has rightly criticised the move, and I believe we too must take a stand. This motion asks us to do three things: affirm our support for neighbourhood planning, press the government to reinstate the funding, and explore what we can do locally to help councils continue their work. Let's be clear, it's about empowering communities, protecting their rights to have a say in the future.
Thank you. Councillor Isaac, to second. Do you want to speak now or reserve your right?
Yeah, I'd like to speak now, Mr. Mayor. That's right. Thank you. In the context of a planning system that is frequently criticised by the public, the introduction of by the Conservative government of neighbourhood planning in the 2011 Localism Act has been one of the most successful initiatives, and one which has gained widespread public support. For the first time, individual communities have felt empowered and able to influence how and where their areas will be shaped in terms of conservation and development, building styles and amenities. In this borough, we've made 15 neighbourhood plans, and 5 more are underway, and there's scope, most importantly, for up to another 20. At a time when public confidence in this country's institutions is at a very low point, neighbourhood planning has motivated and brought together local communities to organise themselves and invest considerable time and effort addressing complex issues in order to agree a plan for the long-term future of their areas. It has been one of the few changes made by Parliament in recent times that has strengthened our democracy and public participation in local government, and has often demonstrated communities' willingness to provide more housing, provided it's placed where they want it. Labour's amended NPPF retains the role of neighbourhood plans. Indeed, as recently as this month, the Minister, Alex Norris, said in Parliament, we want to encourage communities to continue to prepare neighbourhood plans if they wish to do so. Neighbourhood planning has shown that communities are willing and eager to embrace development when given the opportunity. It is therefore surprising and disappointing that this Labour government has announced that the funding for technical assistance in creating and updating neighbourhood plans, not least in responding to the massive changes required to meet the new government's housing targets, is to end. My parishes are very unhappy about this. It is not consistent with the government's stated support for neighbourhood planning, and many will interpret it as another measure against rural communities. It would be a dismal outcome if all that has been gained through neighbourhood planning falls away. And I notice in the revenue outturn support, some of the underspend is going to be allocated to a neighbourhood planning grant by the administration. £0.01 million is being allocated, and I hope that that will influence the administration's vote this evening in support of this motion. I hope that councillors tonight will support this motion, calling on government to reconsider its decision and to ask Cabinet to find alternative ways to help fund the ongoing important work of parish and town councils in promoting neighbourhood plans. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. Councillor Konecka.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, everybody. As the portfolio holder for strategic planning and infrastructure, I've had the honour of introducing a number of neighbourhood plans to this chamber, and those neighbourhood plans have all received unanimous support, and I think that speaks volumes. I think we all agree that neighbourhood plans are an important part of the overall housing planning process, that they're a symbol of a flourishing local democracy, and also they're the product of significant investment of time and effort by community volunteers. So I'm very disappointed to see this cut to the funding for neighbourhood plans being introduced. So this motion has my full support. I'd note point 3 about the council potentially stepping in to look at the funding for the neighbourhood plans. Personally, I'm always reluctant for us to plug the gaps that are caused by funding being cut by whatever tier of government, whether that's central government or Hampshire County Council. It sets potentially a dangerous precedent, and it's just not our job. Our residents are paying tax twice for a service that is only delivered once. However, when we became aware of this funding cut as a planning team, one of the first things we did was to contact all of our town and parish councils to see where they were with a neighbourhood planning process. Our responses are due back by the end of this month, and at that point we'll have a much clearer understanding of what the financial implications are likely to be if we end up funding this. So, in principle, very, very happy with this motion. It has my full support, and hopefully I look forward to sharing with you an update in due course once we know more about the potential financial implications of doing this.
Thank you very much. I don't see any more speakers, so Councillor... I don't see any more speakers, so Councillor Morris-Bone to sum up.
I just wanted to say, Mr. Mayor, thank you for everybody's support. I think there's something, isn't there, that says, and I sort of agree with Andy's point about not stepping in all the time, but actually, in my ward, I know we have one parish council that has quite a lot of money, and they could probably plug the gap themselves, and another very small parish that has no money, and it will absolutely be the complete and absolute barrier for them doing anything. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Move to the vote. Do you want a show of hands on this one? Are we agreed? Agreed. Thank you very much. We move on to agenda item 17. Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, this is a motion that is grounded in a simple but vital principle: preparedness. We live in a time of growing instability, whether it's the war in Ukraine, the rising threat of state-sponsored cyber attacks, energy security concerns, or the risk of infrastructure failure due to climate-related events. There is no doubt that councils like ours must be thinking proactively about the resilience of our local communities. This is not about creating fear. It is about acting responsibly. And it is about ensuring that we, as a council, are fulfilling our duty of care to the people that we represent. Now, the motion before you makes a clear and reasonable request. It asks that we review and strengthen our emergency preparedness and business continuity plans, to work closely with our local resilience forum and emergency partners, to consider how we support vulnerable people in times of crisis, and to explore how we can help residents prepare themselves in a calm and practical way for the kinds of emergencies we hope may never happen, but must be ready for. Mr. Mayor, I want to be clear, this motion is politically neutral, as you can tell with the seconder being a member of the Conservative Party. It is not driven by party lines, and it is not based on speculation or doomsday thinking. It is rooted in our obligations under the Civil Contingency Act 2004, which identifies local authorities as Category 1 responders, frontline guardians of our communities in times of crisis. And what does that responsibility look like? It looks like making sure we have a plan if the power goes out for 48 hours. It looks like knowing how we'd shelter residents if they had to evacuate. It looks like ensuring our critical services can keep running if systems go down or supplies are disrupted. And it looks like making sure that our staff, our residents and our partners know what to do when it matters most. We've seen in recent years, from storms to pandemics, how vital local response can be. And we've also seen how quickly a situation can overwhelm an unprepared system. Resilience planning isn't about predicting the exact form a crisis may take. It's about building capacity and clarity so we're not caught off guard when the unexpected arises. Let me also highlight something else: public trust. When things go wrong, people look to their local council for reassurance, for information and for leadership. This motion helps ensure that we are in a position to provide it. And finally, let's remember this: resilience is not a one-off action. It is a culture. It is a commitment to continuous learning, partnership working, and doing the quiet work behind the scenes that saves lives when the time comes. So I urge all members to support this motion tonight, not because we know what tomorrow holds, but because we don't. Being prepared is not dramatic, it's responsible. And this council, on behalf of its residents, must be prepared, because failing to prepare is preparing to fail. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Miller, do you want to speak now or reserve your right?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll speak now. There's a reason why I was more than willing to second this motion from Councillor Lee. You might have gathered you've got two service veterans here. Well, resilience was part of our world. Being prepared was part of our world. Plans, part of our world. Now, we had a situation in Basingstoke, and there's probably some people in the room that probably weren't here at the time, in 2009, when we had an ice storm hit our town. I was cut off in it. I think a lot of people in this room were probably cut off. I had grandchildren stuck in the middle of town. I had to go and get them where I was stuck in town. So a lot of things happened that night. The county council were obviously involved, but they couldn't get here. We were on our own. It was a freak storm. The mobile phone system crashed. We couldn't use it. Nobody could communicate. So the local radio station came into play. So we actually made do. Now afterwards, and the one person I want to name in the officers' team here was Tom Payne. Tom Payne, that night, did a marvellous job. Subsequently, I worked very closely with Tom Payne from my own ward to try and contribute to the improvement of the resilience plans that we had at the time. I think we need to do it again, because faces have changed. People have changed. We've grown as a town since then, since 2009. It's who's got the resources, the parish halls, the scout huts, the people that can get involved short notice in our own particular areas. As Councillor Lee says, it's not scaremongering at all. It's common sense. It's getting ourselves together. And everybody in this room can contribute. And the parish council, I'm a chairman of the parish council. We've got the detail, the nitty-gritty detail of our communities, and we can contribute to that. I don't know if Tom's going to be the person to do it this time, but I think it's a sensible thing for us to do. I'm more than happy to second this motion, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it's fair to say that we are one of the best prepared boroughs in the country, and I want to thank our staff for their amazing work in this area. I've seen them firsthand in emergency situations, and I can say how proud I am of the way they step up every single time. All of the BDBC service business continuity plans have recently been reviewed and refreshed. Awareness training and scenario testing are currently underway, focusing on loss of staff, including in a pandemic situation, loss of utilities, IT, communications, building, inaccessibility, and disruption of key supplies. Progress is being reported monthly to the Business Continuity Steering Group, which also reviews the wider emergency preparedness. The emergency planning and business continuity exercising and testing strategy has been agreed and will be implemented, and is already being implemented from March this year, and that includes an exercise in October simulating a wide-scale outage of electricity across Basingstoke and Deane. In terms of emergency planning, as a Category 1 responder, Basingstoke and Deane plays an active role in Hampshire and the Isle of Wight's Local Resilience Forum. The forum's recovery framework covers a wide range of risks, from natural disasters to industrial accidents to infrastructure failures and national security threats. The Hampshire and the Isle of Wight LRF partners include the police, the fire service, the NHS, the Environment Agency, the Met Office and volunteer groups. They hold fortnightly meetings to discuss the very high risks and capabilities and work streams and specific plans that they all have available to implement. The local emergency planning arrangements are routinely updated. The emergency planning is recorded on the corporate risk register and received a substantial assurance following the internal audit review of the entire sector in July 2024. Recent testing included an emergency planning exercise simulating a critical incident and activation of the Emergency Control Centre. BDBC has responded effectively to actual incidents in recent years, such as the Oakridge fire or the burst water main in Popley, demonstrating the Council's preparedness and robust emergency response capability. We continue to work closely with West Berkshire Council and the off-site emergency response teams around the atomic weapons establishment at AWE. That is overseen by the Office of Nuclear Regulation and ensures the fitness of those arrangements constantly. In terms of community resilience, we consistently work with our parish and town councils across the borough, encouraging and supporting their development of local resilience plans, several of which are already in place. We also work collaboratively with our partners, such as Basingstoke Voluntary Action, where we're enhancing support for voluntary and faith groups, local businesses and community associations, ensuring a coordinated approach to community preparedness and resilience. I believe the above demonstrates the robust, well-established mechanisms that are already in place to ensure BDBC's emergency planning and business continuity arrangements are fit for purpose. In addition, BDBC continues to meet its responsibilities as a Category 1 responder and remains fully committed to effective emergency preparedness, both internally and in partnership with that wider network. For those reasons, and in discussions with those professionals in this area, we would advise against supporting points 1 and 2 of the motion, because the Council has a strong record in the area, underpinned by regular training, exercising, multi-agency collaboration. Our arrangements have been subject to internal audit scrutiny, which provided substantial reassurance, and we continue to test our response, both through planned exercises and real-life incidents. Last October, there was an emergency management training event for local councillors. Regrettably, only 9 councillors attended. That opportunity to hear from our officers their expert work in this area is something that's important. A report could be brought to the Resources Committee to provide further information and assurance around the emergency planning and business continuity processes, including how we coordinate with all those other partners. That could be achieved as requested if that Resources Committee so requested. It's not for us to say what they do, it's for them to tell us what they want to do, and if they want to receive that, of course they can. On point 4 of the motion, It proposes a standalone BDBC publicity campaign on community resilience. We already participate in a coordinated multi-agency approach to warning and informing through Hampshire and the Isle of Wight's local resilience forum. During emergencies, we provide relevant and timely advice to our communities, and we also support wider national campaigns delivered by central government. Running an independent campaign alongside those others may risk causing unnecessary concern amongst residents and could undermine that coordinated approach. That's the point. It's a coordinated approach where messaging is timed and worked out amongst all of those agencies, not just one of them alone, and we need to hear that. But we could also cover this in a report to the Resources Committee. We could hear that work. We could hear that expert work that goes on. It's really important that we respect the work that is being done in this important area by our officer teams, working with their partners in all those other organisations. And so if the Resources Committee wanted to receive that report, it can very much request that, and we can hear that in the committee.
Thank you. Councillor Ganesh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In 2025, we are living through a period of uncertainty, growing uncertainty around climate change, cyber threats, and enough mention about public health and economic instability are no longer distant possibilities. That's why I raised today to emphasize the critical importance of enhancing local resilience, not just the forums, but the community aspect around it in Basingstoke and Dean Borough Council. We've already seen how devastating the extreme weather can be by flooding in some of our rural villages last year and again in 2023, rising heat waves recently on urban areas and infrastructure strain under pressure. So the public health to remain concerned. 2020, the pandemic, the COVID pandemic was a real wake-up call. And let's not forget the digital world that we rely on. A cyber attack we've had around the country recently and locally in a few businesses just remind us that how important the resilience should be. So the preparedness is not about panic, it's about planning. And it's about making sure that we challenge what we have. And pleased to hear the risk registers and the business continuity plans review frequency through the council leader. So residents should expect us to be ready, and they deserve nothing less. So I urge members to support this motion, and hopefully, God forbid, nothing happens as such to use those business continuity plans or emergency planning. But it's important for us to be prepared. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Monisband.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Which is a very small point. The leader pointed us to paragraph 2, I think, that you were saying that you wouldn't support. Was that right? I wonder whether...
Just to correct myself, those are being delivered, and we don't want to create unnecessary work for our officer team.
And I just wanted to pick up on that point, because what I don't understand is the categories, because I suspect from what you said, there may well be lots of rehearsals and coordination happening between formally category 1 and 2 responders. I've heard on the ground quite a lot of discussion about perhaps the people those responders might rely on the ground, parish councils, community associations and various other community groups, perhaps not being involved on that, not being involved for some time, and that may be that they're not category 1 and 2, and it may be that we think as a council those are in place, but I would suggest, and I don't know why the proposer felt the need to bring the motion, but that's certainly why I feel the need to support it, because here on the ground there are some things for those people that we rely on to understand what would happen, who would contact them, and what would be required of them.
Thank you so much. Councillor Slimming.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to declare the fact that I was involved in the Civil Contingency Act 2004 because I was then emergency planner with the Environment Agency. I was also a member of many of the resilience forums that were formed, many with the Thames Valley, but obviously in Hampshire, across London, with all the fire services, etc. If you actually understood the amount of work that is done both nationally and locally to make sure that we are resilient, you would be absolutely amazed. I'm absolutely sure that the Hampshire group has got a website which will tell you all the different groups looking at every single area that is involved when there's an incident of any type. That covers health, it covers flooding,
It covers everything that you could possibly think about. Yes, it has to be constantly updated because, of course, things change all the time. And I know cyber attacks are something that have come on since I left it. I'm absolutely sure they're dealing with it. I dealt with the response for the Olympics, amongst other things. We also, obviously, dealt with 7/7 in London with the bombing. I was involved in that too. We have got a very secure organisation that is run nationally to make sure that we are safe. At AWE, I'm part of the AWE Liaison Committee. We are working with West Berkshire to make sure that that exercise and those plans are put in force. And everybody who lives within an area around AWE gets a booklet very often telling them exactly what they should do if anything happens involving AWE. And that isn't just a nuclear incident. It could be a fact that we have a fire, as we've had in the past. I really believe that those movers of the motion, do not actually understand what happens out there. My town council has already got its own emergency plan, as you would imagine. Since 1983, we've been living next door. I've been on the council, we've been living next door to AWE. We have our own plan and it gets updated. The school that I actually chair of governors has an emergency plan so that they know what they should do. And that is supported by Hampshire County Council. Those organisations that haven't got one, such as community centres, ought to start thinking about getting one. There are templates, they can write it for themselves. For goodness sake, yes, tell people that we can help, but don't have a go at this council for not doing something or for Hampshire not doing something, because I can assure you they and the rest of the country are. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't see any more speakers, so Councillor Lee, can you sum up?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll try and keep it short and really just to respond directly to Councillor Slimming, because I was a little bit hacked off to be told that I don't know what I'm talking about when I have served 13 years in the British Army. I've seen what the damage a £1,000 bomb does to a camp in the middle of Afghanistan. So I do know what I'm talking about. What I want is for this council to be prepared. I'm sure AWE have looked at a wide range of incidents. Now, I don't want to be fear-mongering here. Russia and Ukraine has kicked off. We're all well aware of this. Now, if Russia was to attack the UK, where do you think the first bombs are going to land, Councillor Slimming? On AWE. So I'm sure you've accounted for bombs exploding not just on AWE, but on the surrounding areas.
Can you?
It's not going to be a nuclear attack.
Members, excuse me, members. Can you speak through the mayor?
Sorry, Mr. Mayor.
You and you.
Mr. Mayor, sorry. Apologies. I think, again, Councillor Howard Sorrell doesn't understand the tactics of how wars happen. Okay, attack critical infrastructure, take down communications. You know, these are the sorts of things that are going to happen. It's not going to go straight from zero to blasting nukes into our towns and cities. So, you know, I've been there, yeah, whilst you were like eating like school meals. So let's not even go there, right? I just want to make sure that this council is prepared. And Councillor Harvey, I do, appreciate the work that is going on. I think there is room to expand. Your point around the public awareness, I've not seen any public awareness from any forum, any stakeholder, any key response team. I think there is a duty of this council who knows its residents uniquely, not somebody that sits in Winchester, not somebody that sits in government, that tells, we know our residents, let's provide them with some level of response that, this is how to prepare and this is how we can do it. I'll just end with, I would urge people to listen to a podcast from Sky News and Turtle Media, War Game. This country is woefully underprepared. It has stated that. That's from lots of very intelligent people, woefully underprepared. So let's try to be one of those councils that is prepared. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Shall we move to the vote?
Yes, please.
Recorded vote. That motion's carried. Let's move on to item 18 on the agenda. Councillor Watts to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to give members a bit of background before we go into the substantial motion. Back in 2011, when I got re-elected on this council, South Ham regeneration was in the local plan. It was specified around Kings Road shops. Again, nothing happened. And it's been in every local plan since. South Ham regeneration, Buckskin, Norden, nothing's happened. And then a couple of years ago, Sovereign amalgamated, well, 18 months ago, they amalgamated with Hill Group and they came SNG, and then it started escalating. They did some low-key consultation, they've done some surveys, done some leaflets. The leaflets were like, would you like lovely new streets, lovely new lamps, lovely public transport that runs every half hour on time? And everybody said, yes, of course we would. So then we came to what happened this year in March and April. S&G held some public consultation in Buckskin and South Ham, and I attended one of them in St Peter's Church. And to my horror, there was a display there of 5-storey flats, reconfiguration of Russell Howard Park, disappearing of roads within South Ham, St Patrick's Road, St David's Road. Part of Western Way was gone, and there was going to be a new community hub in Western Way. And that there was a stand there saying that the whole of South Ham was up for redevelopment. And there was also, the horror stand was, there was a stand there, compensation will be given to residents if you've signed up to this. And quite obviously, I left in dismay after seeing that. And quite obviously, residents who live in South Ham and Buckskin were absolutely appalled at this. So after that, I went out and knocked on lots of residents' doors in South Ham, and people were extremely upset about what is going on. People have lived in their homes for generations in South Ham, and they've spent thousands of pounds on their homes, and a lot of them do not want to live, or do not want to move. So it's not about bricks and mortar and about housing numbers. It's about real people who invested in their homes and they don't want to move. And where S&G have said, oh, they went to the whole of South Ham, the whole of Buckskin, they blighted the whole areas as well. So we've actually seen a depreciating in house value in the last 2 to 3 months. And S&G are actually coming in and undervaluing as well, trying to buy those homes. So since the meeting in April, as South Ham councillors and the Buckskin and Conservative councillors, Hampshire and Borough councillors, we've met with S&G. We've relayed all this to S&G and said, basically, you need to restart again. You need to go back to basics. You need to identify areas that need regeneration. Let's face it, there is some areas in Buckskin and South Ham that do need regenerating, and you need to consult with the people that it's going to affect. They're currently holding consultation in the community. They have rolled back a little bit, but if you look onto their website, you can still actually see the 5-storey drawings around the Russell Howard Park. So they haven't rolled back completely. And they said they're going to spend the whole summer months listening to the community, and then they're going to go out to design consultation, get in members of the public and be co-opted onto their design boards, and then in the new year we're going to get some firm proposals. So I don't know whether I have to explain to all members what an overview committee is.
1 minute,
sit on overview committees. I mean, I did find it interesting that Councillor Harvey did responding to Marcus's question, saying that he was looking for a steering group. A steering group is behind closed doors, Mr. Mayor. It's not open to the public. It's not transparent, and it's not democratic. Well, when I was chair of the E&I committee, we waived standing orders for the local plan so members of the public could speak for 4 minutes. And if 20 people from South Ham want to come and speak to that meeting, they can come. Even more if you want to come. So the chair has that discretion. So for all that, you know, why do we want to go behind closed doors, Mr. Mayor? It's open and transparent. So I'm urging members to start regaining the trust of the residents of South Ham and Buckskin, is to support this motion and start getting the process correct. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. Councillor Dillo, do you want a second speak now or reserve your right?
I'll speak now.
Oh, sorry.
Not quite. Go down. Okay. I'm on. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Firstly, I'd like to thank Marcus and Zenith for asking their important questions. It's really great to see members of the public holding this chamber to account directly. I think that's so good. I'm pleased to second this motion because this regeneration scheme is not just another planning proposal. It is a project that will span 20 years. It has the potential to shape the future of South Ham and Buckskin for generations, and residents deserve to be fully represented in that process. I live in Buckskin, and I've knocked on doors just like Gary has in South Ham, and I know that these are proud, tight-knit, multi-generational communities. Yet many residents still don't know when, how, or if they will be affected. Homeowners and tenants are in limbo and understandably worried. This uncertainty is taking a real emotional toll, and it is our duty as their elected councillors to respond with clarity and compassion. And that's why creating this overview committee really matters. It will be better than a steering group, as it will be totally public and totally transparent. It will provide that vital extra layer of cross-party scrutiny, not just over the process, but over the promises made to residents. It will help ensure that all partners, including SNG and this council's administration, are held to account. And it should take into consideration the comments made earlier about governance as well. Importantly, this committee will ensure the voices of South Ham Buckskin residents are listened to, and that concerns are addressed transparently in an open, transparent forum. We need support. They need support from their elected representatives every step of the way. So creating this overview committee is how we can make all this happen for our residents that we represent. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got at least 7 speakers, so I'm going to extend the 20-minute limit on this debate. So first up, Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it's fair to say that residents in Southampton and Buckskin have been through an awful lot recently that they have very clearly expressed, very loudly and clear. And I know from the conversation with SNG that they've heard it. I said before, and I'll say again, that SNG lost the trust of the community. That was very clear. And they do need to rebuild that. But they are trying to do so. And at some point, we have to have a transition from attack to work with, to design something positive, to do as Gary rightly says, have regeneration that meets the community's expectations. Now, the only way you do that is to have a sense of collaboration with SNG as an organisation itself. I think we're saying don't have a committee. Have a committee. Set the committee up. I mean, you know, from our point of view, without question, we wholeheartedly support effective scrutiny of council priorities and decisions. But this is an SNG-led project. So I don't want to raise people's expectations and be dishonest in any way, and I know you're not, of suggesting that this overview committee can compel or command SNG to do anything. You can invite them to come along, you can invite them to take part, and that's fair. But I also think it's important, and maybe you do it to interact, but have residents involved directly in what SNG are doing. That's the point of a steering group. Not that they come to the committee and say something over 4 minutes on an irregular basis, or that we as cabinet members come along and say, well, this is what we know so far. is actually about you directly involved in the process that S&G are going through to shape it, not to talk about it, not to receive papers on it, but to actually shape it. I think that's the really important point. The only way to move this going forward is to be part of that process. So by all means we can set up, and it might be the fact that we've got a new committee being suggested here, but we also have got 3 existing committees of scrutiny as well. There's ways and means of doing this in a way that you will decide. It is not for the executive to decide how things are scrutinised. But I'm just very conscious of taking all residents with us on this journey. Manydown isn't the same. It was a very different thing, and I know it's been referenced in the paperwork and referenced. It was a very different beast because it was our beast. It was our planning application, it was our land and so on. And you could hold the executive directly to account for the decisions they were making as landowner. So I think it's really important that we put residents front and centre of the conversation. If we have a new scrutiny committee, it's going to need to be able to hear their voice, but that's all it will do. And we need to be honest about that. Councillors can talk to councillors, we could have that debate. We all know how overview committees work, like Gary rightly says. We all know how they work, we all sit around a table, we all have a debate, we all have the paper, and we come to recommendations. Well, you should. The point being, that's about us. This is also, and I use the word also, got to be about the residents. So that's why I'm making that point. The residents' concerns have got to be heard loud and clear, and they have to be addressed. So that's why working with SNG, with councillors, to get them part of that process is important. And we need to remember, as the letter from MHCLG made very, very clear to Marcus in reply to his email, housing associations are independent bodies and they run their own governance and scrutiny processes. And so residents need to be part of them, not just ours, but them as well. We need to respect that. You say about transparency, that's the point. I think we need to be transparent and clear on all of those processes so that residents are directly involved and they know that what they say isn't just a speech given at a meeting, but is something that actually feeds directly in to the decisions that are made and what actually then happens. And we need that kind of interaction with S&G. So there are many ways that we can improve the communications. And Gary's right to talk about people being at the heart of this. And that's the point. The whole point of doing this is to improve people's lives in every way we can. And so I think that's why, if you choose to go for a scrutiny committee, that's fine. But we do need to have SNG, have residents at the heart of what they're doing too. And I think that's really important.
Thanks very much. Councillor Gavin James.
Thank you. I won't go through the history of the Manydown Overview Committee as a long-time servant of the Constitutional Working Party, which is the highlight of my diary whenever it appears. It was invented essentially because at that point Manydown wasn't progressing. We had a High Court judgment. There was Manydown decisions were taken by the Cabinet, which was made up entirely of Conservatives, or the Manydown Executive Committee, which was drawn from the Cabinet, which was all Conservatives. And of course there was a joint Manydown Committee with Hampshire County Council Cabinet members, which were also Conservatives. There was even a Manydown Management Committee that looked after the farmland, which was made up of councillors that were adjacent to Manydown, made up from councillors from Oakley, from Winkleberry, and at the time they were all Conservatives. So it was right to have some overview and scrutiny. It served its purpose. It probably went on too long. But it was our project. We had officers employed in this council to run and manage that project. This is very different. The other thing about Manydown, it mattered to everyone. We're talking 9,000 houses. We're talking millions of pounds, tens of millions of pounds being exchanging hands, which meant it had an impact on everyone in the borough. So we all had a voice on it. South Ham and Buckskin is slightly different because actually it's where people live, not where people might live. So it matters more. It needs to be heard more loudly. The voices of the South Ham and the Kempshire and Buckskin councillors should be heard much louder than the rest of the chamber because it's their community. I don't think there's going to be much concern in the deep forest of Evingar about whether the shops move from the top of Kelvin Hill to St Michael's Road or St Peter's Road. That's not going to be key, but this does matter far more. And that's why I can't support this motion, because I think the South Ham councillors should have a massive voice in this. If you set up an overview and scrutiny committee, it is proportionate. We don't have any choice in that. It means that one of the South Ham Labour councillors cannot have a voice on that committee. They can attend and have their 4 minutes and with the chair's blessing a bit more, but they can't involve themselves in debate and discussion. You will, of course, have independents from Tadley or Bramley on that committee, having a very loud voice on a community that, frankly, we're probably not experts on. So I think we need to think about a different model to make sure that South Ham councillors are fed into the project. But as an overview scrutiny committee, you've got one problem of one of the Labour councillors can't turn up. You've got another problem, in fact, there's no officers in this council to present reports to you, and you can only invite sovereign network groups. It could be a very lame committee. So I'd suggest we think about a better way of making sure that the community is heard and the councillors are heard, and heard more loudly than they would be in what's proposed. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Tony Jones.
Thank you, Mayor. Can I just say that that's not how the Money Down Committee worked last time round. It was people in the ward that was affected, councillors I'm talking about. So it was made up of people from Buckskin, Winkleberry, Oakley. They were on that committee because it affected them. And that's what we are looking for now. All the people it affects, which happens to be Buckskin and Southend. So I, as a councillor, same as Gary here, would expect to be on that committee. Or if not, at least 2 on each committee. You know, we do accept that sometimes we've got to give way to our fellow councillors, but I've got every confidence in Gary passing stuff over to me. On the principle of it's got nothing to do with the council, well, I thought we owned land round there. What's happening about that? You know, especially the community centre that's falling down, you know, that's ours. We own it, Basingstoke and Dean. What are we doing with it? They want to build on it, I think. I want a new community centre there. We've been sitting, if I'm honest, there's been some good reaction from the council on the community centre, having the pub being altered, but that does not cover the community centre. We as a borough should be building it, not waiting for SNG to build it in 10, 15 years' time. That's their policy, 20 years. I had a phone call this afternoon, from a resident. They're thinking they're spending some money. They said, but I'm frightened because I'm going to either have to sell up. Should I sell up now or do this? All I could say to them, it's a 20-year thing. I don't think you're going to be done just yet because you've got a good house, a good area, which wouldn't need regeneration. It just needs certain things doing to certain houses. But we don't know. I most probably give them false advice. I've been to I haven't. I've missed one meeting with SNG. And to be honest, we ask the same questions every time. Where are you going to start? Where is the area? It's quite simple, really. You know, 20 years is a long time. I've got nothing against regeneration. I think we need it. I've been fighting it for years. But it's how you go about it. And I'm sorry, they've gone about it the wrong way. So we should be, as councillors, have more information, perhaps from our own officers, what's going on. Because I'm not happy at all. We seem to be, it's not ours. Let's have it, it's a distance. What I was talking about earlier. It's not our houses, it's SNG's. You know, we run the list, but we can't do nothing about it. Same principle again. It's about time we all woke up and said we're councillors here for a reason. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I'd like to extend my apologies. I should have declared an interest earlier. While not an SNG tenant, I do live in South Ham, and as such, I'll be abstaining on this vote. Thank you.
Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, this motion is not simply procedural. It is foundational to the success, integrity and community trust in one of the most ambitious regeneration projects our borough has seen in recent years. This project holds huge potential to improve housing, reshape public spaces, strengthen infrastructure and bring lasting benefits to our residents. But with that opportunity comes responsibility to ensure that what is delivered is accountable, inclusive and aligned with our long-term goals as a borough. That's why I fully support the establishment of a dedicated South Ham and Buckskin Overview Committee. This isn't just another committee for committee's sake. It's about governance done properly. Now, the E&I committee, while capable, is already heavily tasked with the local plan and borough-wide infrastructure planning. Adding this regeneration to its remit risks insufficient scrutiny of a project that affects the daily lives of hundreds, if not thousands, of residents. I would also like to address the proposal that's been raised around the idea of creating a resident-led project board. At first glance, it may seem like an attractive solution, responsive, local, rooted in the community. And I want to be clear, residents' voices are essential, but we must also be honest about what a project board can and cannot do. Such boards, often by their nature, attract those with time, resources and confidence to participate, and that typically means older, wealthier people. Yet in this regeneration, many of those most affected, tenants, leaseholders and vulnerable households, are less likely to be represented on such a board. If we rely solely on a resident project board, we risk hearing the loudest voices, not the broadest cross-section. Representation becomes skewed. Influence becomes uneven. Moreover, resident boards have no formal powers, no public reporting duty, and no statutory accountability. They can offer feedback, yes, but they cannot request developers attend sessions, interrogate timelines, demand transparency on budgets, or feed recommendations directly into council processes. And that's a problem. Contrast that with a cross-party overview committee, comprised of elected councillors from the affected and neighbouring wards, just as we have done in the Manydown Overview Committee. This committee would be democratically legitimate, publicly accountable and structurally inclusive. It will meet in public, it will publish minutes, it will ask the hard questions and get the answers. And crucially, it can embed the interests of tenants and less heard residents at the centre of its scrutiny. Now, we often talk about stakeholder engagement. Let's be clear, tenants are stakeholders with high interest but too often low influence. We owe it to them to elevate their concerns, not allow them to be diluted or tokenised. A formal committee allows that with transparency, structure and continuity. Now, some have said that this isn't a council-led development. It's a housing association project. Can we really expect them to engage with a council committee? It's true, housing associations are independent organisations. They have their own governance processes. But let's be clear, independence does not mean insulation from scrutiny. When a housing association leads a major transformation in our borough, affecting our residents, our local services and our public reputation, we have not only the right, but the duty to expect transparency. We are not interfering in their internal governance. What we are doing is setting an expectation. If you are delivering change in this borough, in partnership with this council, affecting people in our wards, then you should be prepared to appear before a democratically consulted, public-facing committee to explain your progress and answer legitimate questions. And in practice, most responsible housing associations understand this. They respond to scrutiny because they understand their public legitimacy matters. If any partner refuses to engage, that in itself is a warning sign, and one that this committee will be uniquely placed to identify and escalate. Let me end with this, Mr. Mayor. Regeneration is not just about buildings, it's about people. And the public will not judge us by the size of the investment or the architectural ambition. They will judge us by how involved they were, how well they were listened to, and whether we are held ourselves and our partners to account. So I urge colleagues, let's ensure this regeneration is done with the community, not simply to it. Let's give ourselves and the public a mechanism that's trusted, visible and effective. And let's support this motion and establish the South Ham and Buckskin Overview Committee. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Minus-Bone.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I first want to thank Marcus and Zena for speaking to us tonight. But I want to ask if you'd excuse me for a moment, because I suspect for you it feels like this council has let you down. I don't think this council has let you down as badly as it has let somebody else down. We've heard a lot from Councillor Lee about partnership. We often talk in this council about Vivid and S&G being some of our biggest, most strategic partnerships. The organisation that I think this council let down was SNG. SNG absolutely are driving the car of this project. I believe this council was reading the map next door to it to say where it should go, what it should do, how fast it should go, and help it. And this council let SNG down. I believe if we were acting as a good partner, we would have said, don't do that, don't say this, don't go to the public until you've got all the answers, as Tony has described, but that we failed to do. It is why I support this motion, because actually, and I hope this is some reassurance, that contrary to what some people have said about people in the villages not caring what happens to South Ham and Buckskin, I can assure you, Mr. Mayor, that lots of our residents in rural villages have been outraged and said, what on earth is going on in Buckskin and South Ham? Why don't we know, as neighbours of our residents, what's going on, that we can trust them? And I suspect that is our failure as a council. This is the right answer. And it doesn't mean other things can't happen as far as S&G speaking to residents. But I would say, just reframing it slightly differently, that we need to have some faith as councillors that this council is still a good partner to strategic partners that want to do significant things in our borough and get good common sense advice when we are representing what our partners should be doing and working with our residents on, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Ganesh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Like Councillor Lee or Councillor Watts mentioned, the regeneration is not just about building an investment or brick and mortar. It's about people, trust, and opportunity. So the South Ham and Buckskin are communities with deep roots, but also long-standing challenges from housing quality and health inequalities to youth services and employment. Any meaningful regeneration must tackle these issues with the community at its heart. So that's why proper scrutiny is so important. So a dedicated overview committee gives us the tools to ensure accountability, transparency, and a local voice from local representatives. So it will allow ward members and residents to monitor progress, question decisions, and ensure that what is promised on paper becomes reality on the ground. What stops this council to give the opportunity to local representatives rather than washing their hands off and handing over the entire fate of this project to S&G as it's a S&G-led project? This isn't about adding another red tape. It's about making sure regeneration is joined up, inclusive and fair. That's what we don't just build homes, we invest in services, green spaces, like what Councillor Watt mentioned about the community centre, and opportunity for the people in South Ham and Buckskin. That we don't replace, and we don't displace communities, but strengthen them. So it also builds confidence. Residents need to see that this council is not just delivering regeneration to South Ham and Buckskin, but working with them, listening to them, and in every step of the way. A standing committee will help ensure that this isn't a short-term fix, but a long-term commitment. Let's get this right through clear oversight, strong partnerships, and a relentless focus on outcomes that truly matters to the local people. So I urge members across the chamber to do the right thing and listen to the residents, listen to the local representatives, and give the opportunity by supporting this motion. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks very much. Councillor Cubitt. Don't want to speak. Councillor Kuznescu.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I'm very much in two minds about this motion. On the one hand, I think it's very accurately identified some of the issues at play here, namely that the public has lost trust in this regeneration project, that S&G does need to be held to account, and actually the public should have a strong role in shaping how this community develops in the future. On the other hand, I'm not convinced that an overview committee is going to be the best solution for this. As we've already heard, there are issues around the fact that it's not our project to lead, that we can't compel S&G to come along to the meetings that we've got planned, that potentially there are issues with officers being able to participate in this, and also the fact that there'll be potentially a disproportionate power given to councillors who are nowhere near geographically connected to Buckskin and South Ham. So I'm not convinced, reading the motion, that these objectives that are being put in front of us are actually going to be met by an overview and scrutiny committee. That all said, the one message that's come across very clearly this evening from the debate we've been having is that the councillors for Buckskin and the councillors for South Ham are united in believing that this is the right way forward, and I'm certainly not going to oppose them if that's what they genuinely believe is the right thing for their residents.
Thanks so much. Councillor Howard Surround.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I came with preparedness and resiliency this evening. I actually had a question that I'm hoping one of the officers might be able to answer, because I remember when I was first elected in Brookvale, I ended up sat on the Many Down Overview Committee, which obviously is nowhere near Brookvale. Can we formulate the committee to largely be made up based on councillors whose wards are affected, or does it have to be based on the number of seats each party holds? And I have a follow-up depending on that.
An overview and scrutiny committee has to be politically balanced, as required in the Constitution. An overview and scrutiny committee has to be politically balanced, as required in the Constitution.
Lovely, thank you for that. I thought that was the case. It would have been good if those proposing and seconding the motion had come in and known how many of the ward members would have actually been able to sit on the committee based on that proportionality, but never mind. If we can't manage that, I have a lot of sympathy for the residents, and I think they can get much of what they want for a discount by not doing this as part as a council committee. But if that's where they feel that they would like this to go, and that's where their ward members would like this to go, I'm also wondering if it's a constitutional right of the chair of an overview committee to actually attract an allowance of nearly £8,000 for serving as chair, because I don't think anybody deserves it, quite frankly. The entire situation has been handled very poorly, and whoever ends up chairing this committee, if it does go ahead, does not deserve an allowance for chairing it. And I don't think the residents should... I don't think the residents would be in favour of handing another £8,000 to somebody that they consider has let them down. Yeah, so if...
Can you just speak through the chair? Councillor Jones, can you speak through the chair? Sorry. You should know that as previous mayor.
If people aren't willing to chair it for nothing, then maybe that says all you need to know about your councillors and whether this committee is worthwhile at all. Because if they'll turn up regardless of whether they get paid, great. If they're only going to turn up if they get paid, maybe vote differently next time.
I don't see any more speakers, so...
Mr Mayor, I was actually curious for an answer on that, whether they are... Sorry? Can we add an amendment to say that this will be a completely unpaid or unallowanced chairship?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So it's not in the current member allowance scheme, but member allowances, as you know, have to go through an independent panel, and then they're recommended to council as part of a scheme.
In which case, would this have to have, as part of being formulated and brought as a committee, would that process happen? Just because I know the chair of the Joint Many Down Committee used to attract an allowance for chairing it, so would the committee be set up and no allowance would happen until the next review of allowances?
It wouldn't happen until the next review, yeah. It wouldn't happen until the next review, and it would be a matter for the independent panel, but then it would come back as part of an amended member allowance scheme, which you would have to vote on as council.
Now, as I previously said, I don't see any more speakers, so could Councillor Watts sum up?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That was a disappointing comment. I did not put this motion forward to get myself or Councillor Dillo or any councillor a chair of a committee grant. As Councillor Jones said, we'd actually do it for nothing. So that's how important it is for the residents of Southam and Buckskin. So the Many Down Committee was, the constitution of the Many Down Committee was made up, as there's already fellow members have said, from local members. If we want to do it that way, we can do it that way. We have Conservative members in Kempshire and Buckskin. We have Labour members at the moment in Southam who says we might be independents or reform in a few years' time. So they have every right to sit on that committee. So what's the issue? And even the portfolio holder was on the Many Down Committee. So what is the problem around that? The steering group for S&G, if S&G want a steering group, let them have a steering group. It's fine. But we're the Borough Council. We own Russell Howard Park. We own Westside Community Centre. We funded the doctors and dentist surgery at the church. And if we do get local government reorganisation, we'll have more powers. This authority and combined authority, we'll have responsibility of health, roads. So why should not we be involved? And regeneration is a major platform of the local plan. So we're going to not get involved in it. We're just going to let it go to the local plan. We're going to have a couple of sentences in the local plan report saying, oh, we're going to have a couple of thousand homes regeneration. And they might be in Buckskin in Southam. There's some supposed to be in Northern, but that sort of disappeared. Mr. Mayor, what is wrong with having an overview committee for as members have already said? Southam and Buckskin residents have lost their trust of S&G. This is a small step to getting it back. It'll be open and transparent, and members of Southam and Buckskin will be able to attend that meeting. And we can, as I already said, we can waive standing orders, we can let them speak, and if 20 want to come along, 50 want to come along, if they all want to speak, we can let them speak. They can air their grievances and how badly S&G have actually started this whole process. What have we got to be scared of as a council to be open and transparent and listen to the people of Southam and Buckskin? So I urge my fellow members to support this motion and get on with it. Thank you.
I believe we're ready to vote. Recorded vote. Okay. Motion's been won.
Motion carried.
That motion's carried. Now on to agenda 19. One more motion for the evening. Councillor Tustain.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This motion is about fairness, it's about representation, and it's about preparing our town for the future. It is about equity. Across Basingstoke and Deane, there are now one place I've looked, actually came off the Basingstoke and Deane website, came out as 51 parish councils and 2 town councils. Elsewhere I've seen it reported that it's 41 and 2. Whatever it is, there are a lot. However, those town councils and parish councils give very local representation. Yet the central areas of Basingstoke remain without a formalised local voice. This review that we're proposing presents us with an opportunity to address that imbalance and ensure that every resident has access to accountable, community-rooted representation. So a town council would provide a locally elected body focused on the specific needs of these communities. It would enable more responsive decision making and foster civic pride and participation. Basingstoke's the biggest town in Hampshire, and we don't have a town council. And we are going to move towards a larger body as a unitary, and therefore that will be lost. And I know that other areas in Hampshire are already looking to make sure that they go through the process too. Creating a new town council, it's not about adding layers of governance, but it's about creating equal opportunities for residents to feel heard and valued. And it ensures that everyone has access to a local touch point and can engage with local issues that matter most to them. We've heard earlier tonight about neighbourhood planning. If you're unparished, that starts becoming quite tricky to organise. So this proposal also sits within the broader context of local government reorganisation across Hampshire. LGR presents an opportunity for simple and stronger and secure governments. But all proposals will reduce the local voice, whatever the size we end up with as a unitary. A community governance review allows us to put in place fair representation for all residents in the borough's area of the new unitary. A CGR is a vital piece of the jigsaw that will help fashion our new world. It ensures that whatever structure emerges from the reorganisation, Basingstoke's unparished areas are not left behind. There is talk from the government of a preference for neighbourhood area committees. However, there is a lack of clarity around how these would work. There are some around the country already, and they're all very different. Their longevity, their effectiveness and structure is difficult to clarify. Currently, they lack the independence, the electoral legitimacy and clarity of purpose that a town council provides. And although not a preferred option, these could be included for consideration within the terms of reference for CGR. Please support this motion to take the next steps to a community governance review. Our residents deserve the opportunity to help shape their governance and at least have a chance to look into this. We all share a commitment to improving civic participation and ensuring our communities feel heard and valued. Let us seize this opportunity to empower our residents, strengthen local democracy and prepare Basingstoke for the future with a governance structure that is fair, balanced, local and built to last. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Councillor Tony Jones, do you want to reserve your right? Councillor Gavin James. Councillor Gavin James, I'd first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I absolutely agree with the principle that Basingstoke Town Council should be exploring how it will cope in a post-LGR world as it becomes a bigger council. Certainly, of course, as the Deputy Mayor did earlier today, voted for the council that would be Rushmore, that would be Hart, that would be Basingstoke, would be East Hampshire and Winchester, all in one council. That's what the motion mover wants, a council that stretches all the way down to Horndean. And will actually be very close to the coast, which is frankly ridiculous. I'm really shocked that she did it, but there we go. She does seem to turn very Tory at the county hall. But I do agree with the principle. What worries me is the pace, because I'm aware, it was in the Gazette, I read it, that there's a people in Winklebury and Manydown looking at should there be a Winklebury-Manydown Parish Council. It's an interesting conversation. Would they change their mind if there was a Basingstoke Town Council, or would Basingstoke wrap around it? And if they want a parish council, would Popley, Northern, etc., maybe want a north of the railway line parish council rather than a whole town? I know some areas have a town forum, which has preset powers. It's all the democratically elected councillors for the unparished area sit on a separate forum and discuss issues that relate purely to that area. So there are lots of options, and we seem to have gone from let's agree in principle, then have terms of reference written and come back before next full council without any room to debate or discuss those options. I also know, and I'll declare an interest, I am someone who lives in a private estate where we pay, the council don't cut the grass, they don't maintain the trees, they don't even look after the pavements. We pay someone else to do that as part of the estate management. And I'm not convinced I can turn around to those residents and say, you're going to pay your maintenance charge for your estate, plus you're going to pay a parish council precept or town council precept, and you're going to pay borough council tax as well. So I think there's a lot more to think about. We have time to look into it and think about it. So I do think I would like the proposer perhaps to look at perhaps keeping the first bullet point. I'm not sure a community governance review is required at this stage until we've seen all the options. We need officers' advice on what are the available options, what might we want to explore, and then take that to a relevant committee and then come back and make a more short-footed decision. So I think at the moment we're sort of just jumping into, I know these initials, they mean something, and just doing it. So I'd like to think how we can, I'll certainly support it if we can make it clear that it's going to go to for a bit more work first, not stopping it coming back, because I actually think it's the right thing to do, to have some governance arrangement for Basingstoke in the future. But I'm not sure this is the right journey to go on to get there. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Monisman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was just reflecting on what Councillor Tustain said about having a local accountable body more responsive to local decision making and engaging local residents in local issues. I believe that's what the Labour government put in their local government reorganisation paperwork. It's not often mentioned because everybody seems to be obsessing about the size of councils and what scale services should be delivered at. But one of the things that is absolutely in our objective to deliver is something that gets local engagement, local democracy right. She's absolutely right to focus on local committees. What are they? What area do they cover? What are they responsible for? How do people get engaged? Absolutely is not clear, but it is for us to decide. I won't be supporting this motion because I think what we're in danger of doing is doing the exact opposite of what I believe your objective is, which is adding confusion. Why do I think that? Because certainly in our ward, picking up on management companies, we've got estates of 800 houses, of 1,000 houses, of 20 flats, of 30 houses. With a parish council, we are one of the few places that has an open parish council. Lots of people paying not one set of management agent fees, but two lots of management agent fees, and a district council and a county council. I can absolutely say very clearly, if I was to ask my residents whether they wanted some of that gone, they would say very clearly yes. We also, I think, should understand that we're not the first peoples to have gone through this process. Councillor Harvey knows we spent time at the local government conference together during the day, looking at and speaking to people who have gone through this experience. Without a fault, every area that has gone through this process that has ended up with specific local town councils motivated by this process have said very simply, don't do it. Very clear, don't do it. It's a mistake, residents don't like it, and they potentially end up paying an enormous amount of money for services being delivered in a highly inefficient way. So, absolutely, I think everybody in this chamber supports local engagement. I also believe that it's probably our biggest challenge the next time we discuss local government reorganisation. Where the boundaries are, what happens to services, what happens to the money, will be relatively easy, and we know how difficult those things are, compared to answering the most difficult homework question, which is, how do we have good democracy, good engagement, and local decision making, which is what we are tasked to do in our submission. Local committees clearly are the answer, but I don't think we know much about them. So I think, frankly, I absolutely support localism, but this is the wrong motion at the wrong time. I think we need to be a long way down the journey before we come to this position to decide whether we've got a gap that needs filling. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks very much. Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am disappointed in what happened at the County Council this afternoon. The votes of many of our local county councillors to support the county model, which is basically subsuming us into a council the size or greater than the size of Greater London, is greatly disappointing because that certainly isn't local. It's got nothing to do with local. And if this is a trying to make up for that, then I'm disappointed in it. I'm also disappointed because Jim McMahon in his letter made it pretty clear that he didn't support parish and town councils and wants us to go over to area committees. So we've got a bit of a juxtaposed position going on here between what one Labour councillor is telling us, which I respect, what the government is telling us they're not interested in, and then the overwhelming support of our local parish and town councils. I mean, me and Andy have done, I think, a tour of 3 times around the borough so far, and we'll go around again, talking to our parish colleagues about their importance to any idea of local democracy going forward. But they're not the only forum. We have residents' associations and community associations, and we have ideas around assemblies and different forms of democratic engagement that we need to think very carefully about. The idea of us creating a town council at this pace risks undermining that debate that needs to take place. On a North Hampshire level, and I do mean that, North Hampshire, Basingstoke-and-Deane, Hart and Rushmore, because that's what we're fighting for, not Greater County Council, or to keep the County Council going when it's failing us as badly as it is. Not every area wants to be parished, but those that do deserve to be heard. The idea of a town council can be explored, but we've got to recognise that some of the town areas want to be parished and not in a town council. So where do we square that conversation? Because there's petitions ongoing at the moment to parish areas of the town. We also need to think very carefully, and there's already been said about the council tax issue. Charging council tax, followed by a management fee, followed by a precept, is a triple whammy that many of our residents are not prepared to take, nor will they have been part of this conversation if we move at the pace being suggested. So the process for making this decision is really important. We need to have the space to think. We need to have the space to be advised. We need to have the space to have a conversation and not rush into. Because, and this is the important point I think within the motion's now amended resolves, it would involve a community governance review of the whole borough. That's what those words say. Now, if that's the case, nobody has asked any parish council or town council that exists in Basingstoke-and-Deane whether they want a community governance review in the first place. And I thought, out of politeness, as a borough council and a passionate localist, that should be what we do first. Do you want to be part of this in the first place? And if you don't, that's a very clear message. But it's also the point that we're not then doing the government's job of getting the long screwdriver out thinking we know what the solution is to these democratic conversations. We need to have a real sense of engagement and conversation and a process of learning what works in different communities of different sizes. Don't forget, Basingstoke-and-Deane came from the point that Basingstoke was the largest piece and Deane was the smallest piece. Therein, there is a relevance to having that debate. For the whole of the borough, yes. For the town, yes. Rushing it for the next council meeting, no. And if this is about setting up a mayor for the Basingstoke town area, if that's what's driving this, and I don't know whether it is, it may well be. The important point is that a ceremonial mayor, if that's what we wanted to pursue, there are other legal routes to look at for our place to achieve that end. And that's another conversation we haven't had yet either. The big question, the one that's actually right in front of us right now that we will have to answer in September, is do we support the principal business case for North Hampshire, Basingstoke-and-Deane, Hart and Rushmore? That's the battle that's actually in front of us here and now. And make no mistake, the county council, with its little friends in East Hampshire, are making a case quite clearly for something very different. And our residents will lose out because their maths don't add up, their geography is huge, they have no concept of localism and local connection to community, and it's simply carrying on with a system that is broken. There is a reason why the county council is on the edge of a 114 notice and going bankrupt. It's because they've never transformed their services, they've never taken the issue of actual service delivery reorganisation seriously, and that's a place to start. We want better than what the county council has offered, not a simple imitation of it. Now that was what was on the table this afternoon at the county council. So I am disappointed in all those county councillors across Basingstoke-and-Deane, and I'm sitting on to next that didn't. Probably the only one that didn't actually.
No, Aaron went early as well.
Aaron left
5 minutes.
Aaron left early.
Minutes.
Who voted for the county council option?
That's your 5 minutes anyway. Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As a ward councillor, we went through a local governance review within my ward, and we created Sheffield Park Parish Council. Now, I'm looking at our legal representative because at the time we were told how long that process took. And you can't rush it because of the sequence and the petitions that the leader of the council just mentioned. It takes 2 years. You cannot rush it. It will take 2 years. From where we are at the moment, in 2 years, we don't know where we're going to be. That's the problem. So you can't aim for anything in 2 years' time because it's an unknown target. To have this to appear with terms of reference by the next full council meeting, I think is very overly ambitious and almost impossible to achieve. The principle, I'll go back to what was said earlier on, the principle, can't disagree with that at all. The other problem is this town is growing. We're building houses. The shape of the town is changing. Some of it, we've got 3 urban parishes. I've got 2 of them in my ward, and Councillor Minus-Brown's got the other one. But we manage. But if this thing was going to happen, it's like a lot of jigsaw pieces. I said it to somebody earlier this evening. You draw a Venn diagram about where your parish councillors are, where the parish councillors aren't. It was very interesting some time ago. Community organisations have the same right of doing a neighbourhood plan, by the way, than parish councils do. You don't have to be a parish council to do a neighbourhood plan. I approached a ward member in the town some years ago because she asked me, well, how do you get a parish council going? I said, well, you could have a parish council in the town. Oh no, I can't get anybody to lead it and organise it. That was the response I got. And it was a Labour councillor. She was embedded in this town for decades. Now, she would have loved a parish council, but she couldn't get it off the ground. And I think maybe in a couple of years, maybe when we've gone through the exercise, not the exercise, we've got through the decision process that the leader of the council just mentioned in September, and beyond. So we don't really know. Then we can examine how we set up the proper localism that we require in what is now the borough of Basingstoke-Deane. I cannot support this motion in its present form. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Vaughan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Miller said a lot of what I was going to say, so I won't repeat it. But I live in Sheffield Park, and I was part of that local governance review that created a parish council for my community, and it has transformed our community. It's 1,000 houses. It has a real sense of a village, a community, everybody looking after each other. What our parish council talks to me about a lot is a local government's review on the small scale. They're saying, actually, as my colleagues, councillors from Bramley will know, there's Bramley Parish Council, for historic reasons, comes right down to Chinham. So we have lots of residents in Vine Park who are parished in Bramley but use facilities in Sheffield Park. We have Orham Green, who is embedded in our Chinham, Vine Park, Sherford Park community, who have no parish at all. So I do believe that we need to take this through a proper process. You know, we don't know enough yet about local government reform and what our unitaries are going to look like. When we know that, when we know how it looks like, we can ask our communities how they want local representation. You know, do they feel they need parish representation, a town council representation, or does something different work for them? So I absolutely agree we need to do something, but as my colleagues are saying, just not right now. Thank you.
I don't see any more speakers, so we got Councillor Jones, Julian Jones.
Yes, this is a process that has affected my time as a parish councillor, because in fact at the time when we had to go to the Privy Council to make some of these decisions, Beggarwood was deparished from Dummer because they believed that the precept they were paying was something like £50, when in fact it was £5. But so they voted to leave us. That was a very chaotic process because, as I say, it had to go to the Privy Council, and the person in the borough who was managing that process took early retirement. So anyway, we lost that bit, and that became part of the town. Since then, we've built Longacre and Hounsome Fields and the golf club, so an area that will in total add up to 2,200 extra houses. Those are still in the parish, but they are within the settlement policy boundary of the town. I don't know what the definition of Basingstoke town is in this motion, and so now I find it almost impossible to vote for it. I think everyone's agreed that we need, and I should have mentioned that the people of Longacre, Hounsome Fields and the golf club pay huge fees for their management fee of their sites. So there are many things that would have to be resolved, and we need a clear definition of what the town is. So I think this is a process that may be necessary once we've sorted out the other organisational things, but it's something we shouldn't rush now. We really don't have the information, and it will cause many different issues that we really haven't thought about. Thank you.
That was Councillor Jones's maiden speech, by the way. Councillor Oborne. Councillor Oborne, we got you to speak. No? We might have made an administrative error there. No more speakers. Do you want to second it now, Councillor Tony Jones?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I second this motion. I don't know where to start. I didn't expect what I have heard, actually, to be honest with you. When is the right time? Local government organisation, the review, or whatever they'd like to call it, seems to be more questions than answers. We've just been talking about SNG and the regeneration. Oh, you know, we should be doing this, we should be doing that. You know, in 2 years' time, this new organisation across North Hampshire might turn around and say, no, we don't want Basingstoke Council. What do we do then? You know, that should be in our brief now, that we want one, and how it's going to happen. Who's going to make the, you know, who's going to look after our history of Basingstoke? Seems to have got lost the last few years, if I'm honest with you. You know, this town and its mayor has been around for centuries, and no one seems to be worried about that. Oh, it's only history. Once it's gone, it's gone. I'd urge everybody just to vote for this. Doesn't mean we're going to get it. It means we want, you know, this motion says we want it, but something else may come up, as people are saying. But what I want to do is safeguard looking after Basingstoke town. You can't have parishes having their say, and the vast majority in this borough, which is Basingstoke town area, which we do know what it is, we've done it in the local plan, has no say. So that's all we're after. How much power it would have, I doubt very much. But let's see what happens. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Councillor Tustain, to sum up.
Thank you everybody for your feedback. Now those of you that know me know that I will always listen to what people say, and I've heard what everyone said tonight, and I take on board a lot of the comments. I think a lot of what was intended in this motion has been misinterpreted, and I'll take responsibility for that because it's my words, and also with a lot of input from officers to try and help me get the words right. The intention of this motion was quite simply to actually go out, create some terms of reference to guide us on a journey to make sure that we also address something that is part of local government reorganisation, which is understanding what we want locally. Councillor Jones just mentioned the fact that we won't be here. I appreciate where people say there is no timetable in this. I haven't said we've got to do this by a certain date or anything. So as I say, I think that's misinterpretation on words. I won't go into why I voted for the county's option. I had some very valid data-driven reasons, and I'll leave it at that. However, going back to this, the idea of a town council, we have a lot of people in Basingstoke, and I have considered the fact of the precepts and all of those sorts of issues. But I know within my ward, there are a lot of people who feel very disengaged, very disenfranchised, and they don't have a voice. And it is really hard to get that motivation and get people doing things. Councillor Vaux suggested, she supports this in principle, which is, I thank her for that. And she talked about how when they went through the process in Sherfield Park, it made improvements and it made things better for people. Now, you can vote against the motion based on the wording, or you can vote for the motion based on the intention here to set some terms of reference in place by October as to what we can do. There is no stipulation what will be in those terms of reference. That is up to us to define. They can include, do we go to the parish councils or do we exclude parish councils? I have said the borough because I want to include everybody and have that opportunity. Let's not just dismiss this as being something that we think is, well, we're trying to do something too quickly or too hard. But I think we deserve residents have an opportunity to think about this. If they don't want it, if it seems to be the wrong thing, at least we've addressed it. The best thing I'm taking from this tonight is we have actually talked about it, because I think it is really important. And I know Councillor Harvey talks about the three, and Gavin talks about the three, the North Hampshire option, and obviously the county one being a lot bigger geographically. Both of those options are bigger than what we are now. And also, the options are also smaller than Hampshire County Council, I will say. But whatever it matters, the important thing is residents deserve to have a way of feeling part of their communities and being able to know where they can go and how they can speak to people about the small, hyper-local things that matter to them. That's the intention of this, and that intention of this is just to get people to think about it and to think about how we're going to go and what we could possibly do to maybe take a couple of steps so that residents can have a viewpoint and get heard. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Move to the vote. That motion has lost, members. Then we're going to go backwards to the item number 8 on the agenda, which is the Revenue Outturn Report for 2024-25. And Councillor Gavin James, you're up.
Mr. Mayor, sorry, apologies to Bain. I need to get to Newmarket, obviously 2.5 hours away. I'm going to be leaving. Can I just ask that Councillor Harvey provides a written response to my question in the questions, please? Sorry to interrupt.
Is that okay?
I'm happy to do that. I'm also happy to share it with the entire chamber.
Councillor Isaac, your mic's on. Right. Councillor Gavin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is the Revenue Outturn Report for the last financial year. So it's a document talking about history. It comes out in a favourable position, I guess you could say, in terms of being 1.09 million surplus. Worth mentioning, some of that money is simply money that we haven't been able to spend within the budget year. The most prominent, the biggest chunk of that is related to the local plan. As you remember, we were, when we set the budget, expecting to be a little bit further on with the local plan, but we've had to redo the previous year all over again in order to satisfy Ms Rayner. So that money hasn't been spent, be moved forward. So the proposal is of the £800,000 underspends, which are all explained within the report, they will move into next year's budget. In fact, I think some of it's been spent already in terms of publication on Your Place magazine. There does leave a surplus of £290,000. You'll remember when we set the budget last year that we had to draw down an additional £460,000 from reserves, because when we first set the budget, we didn't know about the national insurance increase because we started the budget process in June, July, August time, and obviously that didn't happen until the autumn. So we're actually being able to put some of that money back in because we still have to deal with that for future years as well. So that's the proposal. It's generally as close as you can get to a balanced budget, with the surplus going to support us in future years. Unless anyone has any questions, that would be my recommendations.
Do we have a seconder? Councillor Harvey, second. Does anybody wish to speak on this? Councillor Tustain.
I just wanted to make a comment. £1 million unspent in revenue, and we've got areas within my ward that don't look brilliant. Now, I wanted to also make a comment that the officers and the MAD team that this administration put in place has been brilliant, and they've done some really good work. But I am a little disappointed because I think this money, with a little bit of flexibility and agility, could possibly have been moved. Now, this is obviously the way councils work, the way local authorities work. However, I think it's wrong not to do it. When I get residents saying to me, what am I paying my council tax for? And if the money's going to end up going into reserves on revenue spend items, I think that's rather disappointing.
Are there any other speakers before I ask Councillor Gavin James to reply?
Yes, thank you. We do draw from reserves in order to support the revenue budget. In fact, at the current time, we are drawing quite heavily on those reserves, although admittedly we are funding the capital programme from within the revenue budget, effectively moving reserves to the capital programme. So we are spending considerable amounts of money. If there's any specific proposals in your ward, any revenue proposals or capital, please bring them forward, have a conversation. Can't guarantee we can fund them or pay for them, and I appreciate your ward is not a ward with much 106 money coming in, but you're welcome to have a conversation and we'll see what we can do.
Is that report agreed? Members? Thank you very much. And now we're on to the capital programme outturn 2024-25. Councillor Gavin James again.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. This has been causing me problems since I took on the role, where we seem to have a constant and regular disparity between what we said we'd spend and what we'd actually spent. It's a much closer this year, and admittedly a lot of the money is around Manydown, where we were going to do loans that we're not going to do, and that for some bizarre reason goes into the capital programme rather than sit in Treasury management. So that's caused some issues over the past. There are some delays to schemes. They are all laid out in there. What you'll also see is the report goes on quite considerably, because recognising the constant problems, and one of the challenges with lots of money exposed in Manydown, plus we're just about to do the aquadrome, it's really important we know when money is coming out and when money is going in. So we have gone through the entire capital programme, and I'd thank the officers, particularly the Chief Executive and the 151 officer. We're sitting down with the senior officers to go through and actually challenge, are these schemes ready to go, what's the likely timescale, and actually moving things to when they're actually going to happen rather than when we'd like them to happen. As a result of that, some have come out of the scheme entirely, mostly relating to things like the aquadrome, where clearly we're now in a position where we're going to replace it. So a lot of the repairs that we put capital aside to do, we're not going to spend, which puts us in a stronger position. There are some matters for council to approve. They are listed in 7, 8, 9 and 10 on page 81 of your, if you're online. Most of them relate to 106 monies that have now been obviously very much ring-fenced in terms of how they can be spent. There is a request to set up a new capital scheme. One of the challenges at the moment is when a scheme is delayed, prices go up, and suddenly you'll find yourself being a couple of £100 short. and by the time you come back to council or done something about it, there's no way of sort of moving that money quickly, plus you get emergency things that are suddenly required. So there is a recommendation to create a new capital scheme named the Capital Contingency Fund, set up with £150,000, just so we can deal with emergencies as they arrive. There's also another vehement relating to the BMX park at Down Grange. People will know this was originally set up, I think, by residents. We do need emergency access. We've started that process, but it's going to cost a bit more money than we thought. So we are looking to spend some money on that. So that's the capital programme. Obviously, the underspend that is announced in there just gets fed back into it. A lot of it's through moved spend. The rest will be available to the capital programme, although I will say that still remains exhausted for the next couple of years because of the cost of replacing the aquadrome. If anyone's got any questions.
I'd prefer a seconder first.
Oh, we can have a second first.
Okay. Are there any speakers? Councillor Vo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just one comment and one question. On page 91, para 311, my comment, this refers to play area improvements and the budget being contingent on the land transfer at Sherwood Park. People who've been in this council for a long time will know that I've spoken on a number of occasions of the disappointment that we have as a community on the time it has taken for the adoption of various parts of Sherwood Park and how it has delayed so many of our community facilities and the ability for the community to move forward and make the most of things. And it's particularly depressing now we're being through a stage of inflation where money buys less. You know, so I wanted just to note that whilst we're getting quite excited that it's getting to the end, and I know the papers are there to be signed, and we are going to get there, but we've had that now for 3 or 4 months that we're ready to sign. So I just wanted to say to the council, it's still going on. My question is on page 93, para 3.21, and relates to the tennis centre, £400,000, which was earmarked for works that are apparently no longer required. Now, I may be wrong in this, but my understanding was that this was money put aside to erect a building next to the tennis courts in Memorial Park to bring the facilities, some facilities closer to the tennis courts rather than at the, I think it's the Arnott Centre, I think technically it's called, because that's quite a walk. So just for people to understand is, if you're teaching, coaching young people, very young children, teenagers in sport, they need the bathroom. They need to go back to the building. Now, they have to be accompanied by adults. It makes it really difficult to run tennis facilities if you haven't got running water and toilets near to the courts. And that was what some of this money, I believe, was there to do. So I could be wrong, but what I'm looking for is assurance that something is going to be done to put facilities near those courts, because that is what I've been assured for quite some years now that was going to happen. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Anybody else want to speak on this capital programme? Councillor Gavin James, can you just sum up then, and can we agree this report?
Yeah, just to quickly sum up, you're absolutely right. The £400,000 is taken out. I think that may have been down to the roof replacement rather than the setting up of the new reception area. I will double check that for you, because obviously it went out to tender. We've got a new operator in there now who's operating slightly differently, and so there's a conversation we had about them, about their long-term vision. Now they're underway. I shall find out for you and get back to you exactly what's planned there.
So are we agreed with this report? Thank you. Item 10, Treasury Management. Apparently I've got to move this and the Deputy Mayor to second, but we better ask for some speakers if there are any. Doesn't seem like it. So I'll move the report then, if that's okay. So, similarly with item 11, we've got the reappointment of the External Audit Committee personnel. Are we all agree with that? Well, I'll move that and you can second that. Thank you very much. We're moving on here, aren't we? Item 12, the Audit and Accounts Committee Annual Report. You've obviously all read this. Anybody want to speak? And if there's no one to speak, Councillor Basham's not here anyway, so I'm happy to move that. Seconded by the Deputy Mayor. Item 13 is the Standards Committee Annual Report. Once again, I'll invite anybody to speak if they want to speak. If not, I'm happy to move it as Mayor. Seconded. Number 14 is the Overview and Scrutiny Annual Report. Once again, I'll invite anybody to speak if they want to speak. If not, the Mayor will move it. That's seconded. So, Item 20, questions from members of the Council on notice. Question 1, Councillor Diller.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's a bit of a curveball question, but it is an important one. I've recently been contacted by a Basingstoke resident who is in the process of becoming an adoptive parent. Their experience has highlighted a distressing and sadly common issue for children and young people in care, the practice of moving them between placements using bin bags to carry their belongings. This is clearly unacceptable. While I fully recognise that the children's services are the legal responsibility of Hampshire County Council, I believe there is a real value in this council publicly backing the My Things Matter campaign for children in care and writing to Hampshire County Council to encourage them to sign up. Doing so would show leadership, amplify the campaign's message and demonstrate that we care deeply about the dignity and well-being of children in our local community, even when the direct responsibility lies elsewhere. So, will the Leader of the Council therefore support and sign the pledge for the My Things Matter campaign, publicly express the Council's support for ending the use of bin bags in care moves, and also write to Hampshire County Council urging them to sign up to the campaign to emphasise that all children in care in our area should be moved with dignity. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Dillo, for the question. It looks like you got the same email many others and most of us got this week. I take it you support that this administration has reached out to sign up in support of the NIAS campaign. It's clearly, from what you've just said, got cross-group support, so that's good. And I'm very pleased that we have signed up to the campaign. I noticed on the list of authorities that have signed up, Hampshire County Council has not. Southampton and Portsmouth both have, and I welcome our fellow councils' endorsement of this campaign. I'm very happy to publicly endorse the campaign on behalf of the administration, because we all agree that this is a matter of dignity and it has an absolute relevance to respect. We're confirming with Hampshire what they actually do, and I've written to them to establish their practice, but also to urge them to sign up to the campaign themselves, and they should. While we can't commit a future new council to policy, that's something that it would determine. We can ensure that if we, by signing up as we have done, we set the trend, we set the message, and we can lobby them to be also signatories to this when they come into existence. I want to thank the residents, the many residents that have written to many of us this week, highlighting the issue and how important it is to them. And I hope they will also support our action in signing up to this campaign. So I welcome Councillor Dillow's endorsement of the action that we've taken.
Do you have a supplementary, Councillor Diller?
Just very quick, thank you. I did obviously copy Councillor Harvey in when I originally submitted this question. So I think you've already probably done this, but would you be kind enough to copy me into the correspondence that you sent to Hampshire County Council urging them to sign up to this important campaign? Thank you.
We'll arrange for that.
Thank you.
Members, there's an assumption that question 2 will be answered by Councillor Harvey as requested by Councillor Miller.
It's actually an important question.
No, Councillor
so I'd
Lee,
quite like
sorry,
us to address the Chamber, if you don't mind, Mr Mayor, if that would be acceptable.
Sorry. Councillor Lee.
I just want to point out, and this is really important, that the scrutiny is a member-led and not members of the Cabinet process. Member briefings are not intended as a substitute for the scrutiny and policy development process. If there is a reduction in the formal scrutiny meetings, then it's not a matter for the administration but for the committee chairs and committee members to consider what items could and should be brought to a committee. I note that several meetings have been cancelled due to a lack of agenda items. Now, members have received training on scrutiny last year where the best practice of scrutiny was emphasised, and that was really good. Member briefings are intended to share information with all members, and we've been keen, as well as officers, to share information about some really key operational aspects of the Council's business, including the rollout of food waste in October, housing, local government reform, and a myriad of subjects. That's because of our desire to be transparent and inclusive. Now, the feedback from those events has been really welcome, and it's inputted in those meetings and in what's come from them. But they're not intended to replace scrutiny, and they shouldn't, and they're not meant to. So information and issues related to housing, for example, have been particularly well received, with a highly positive feedback. And on the list of subject areas that have been delivered since May 24, and also been continued to be developed, there's other 10 sessions or more are planned for member or member briefings. But I want to make it absolutely clear, we are really very happy to work with committee chairs to facilitate the scrutiny of policy. We need that to be led by members and committee chairs, but we're very happy to take part in the process. But we shouldn't conflate member briefings with the scrutiny process. They are very different things.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, is it possible for me to reply on Alex's behalf? And I know what he wanted to say at this stage.
As it's at my discretion, yes.
So thank you, Councillor Harvey, and really appreciate the clarity on that point. I think what is important, and Alex and many of our group have actually been discussing this as a concern for us, is that often when chairs and others are bringing scrutiny issues up with officers, that we are being told that there is information via these other routes that, as you discussed, aren't actually for scrutiny. So a lot of the time we're being told, oh, well, that's being covered on that briefing, or we could do a briefing on that rather than it being scrutinised in this way. It's not something that, obviously, you want to happen, it's not something we want to happen, so hopefully we can work together to make sure that doesn't happen going forward.
I just think we need to be really, really clear. I totally respect what Councillor West has said. The officer's advice is the officer's advice, as it always is, and we always respect that. But if committee members and the chairs want to bring items forward for scrutiny, one of the points of the committee training was to deep dive into particular subjects and not get report after report after report for noting or necessarily discuss things just for the sake of discussing things, but to actually pick things in terms of scrutiny and to go through a process that involves working with our officer team to explore a particular area of policy, to explore a particular decision that was made, whatever it might be. So I think the opportunity for scrutiny here really is there, and I think the member briefings have a particular role that they play in part of involving all members in some of the biggest decisions and the most important pieces of information that we share. For example, working with our housing partners and bringing them in to be scrutinised alongside what we do. And we've done that on a regular basis. And I'm very grateful to SNG and to Vivid for coming into the Borough Council to work with us in terms of being scrutinising their processes.
Thanks very much. And finally, everybody, item 21 on the agenda. Are there any questions to the Chair of Cabinet or committees on the minutes listed in your agenda? I'm hoping you're going to say no. So at that stage, I declare the meeting closed.